Welcome back, friends. As always, it's CrumbleBob here, and today we're diving once again into the world of absurd relationships and shocking twists. So get comfortable, and let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm using a throwaway account for clear reasons. My name isn't truly Mark, but it will work for this. I am 35 years old. My wife, whom I'll refer to as Sarah, is 33. We've been married for 10 years and together for 12. We have 2 children, a daughter, Lily, who is 8, and a son, Tom, who is 6. I am writing this, I believe, to attempt to bring some order to the chaos that has erupted in my life over the past 48 hours. Maybe sharing this with strangers will offer some clarity, or at least a sounding board. For the past 12 years, my professional life has involved working as a senior project manager for a large commercial construction firm. The projects are intricate, high value, and consistently operate under tight deadlines. This means long hours. A typical day involves 10 to 12 hours at the site or office, and it's not unusual for that to stretch to 14 or 15 hours when we're aiming for a phase completion or handling unforeseen crises, which are common in this field. Weekend work, at least a Saturday morning, is more often the standard than the exception. It's a challenging career, certainly, but it's one that has enabled us to live comfortably, buy a nice home in a good school district, and provide Sarah the chance to not be financially burdened by the need to work. Before we had kids, Sarah was employed as a freelance graphic designer. She was skilled and maintained a modest client base. When Lily was born, we held numerous discussions about childcare and careers. Sarah showed a keen wish to be a stay-at-home mother, at least for the children's early years. I backed this decision. My earnings were sufficient, and we both felt that having one parent consistently present was beneficial. She formally stopped taking on new clients roughly 6 months after Lily was born, and has since mostly seen herself as a homemaker, though she would occasionally do minor design tasks for friends or local community groups, more for enjoyment than for money. Our early family life was, I thought, rather stable. I managed my challenging work schedule, and she oversaw the household and the kids' everyday routines. When I was home, I aimed to be present, handling bath times, bedtime stories, and weekend activities, when my job didn't get in the way. The change started subtly about 8 or 9 months back. Sarah began speaking about desiring more of a social life, feeling somewhat isolated. Her friend, Jessica, whom she's known since university, began arranging girls' nights out. At first, it was once a month, maybe dinner, or a film. I offered complete support. I believed it was good for her. I would handle childcare entirely on those nights. Gradually, the frequency grew. Once a month turned into every other Friday. Then, for the past 3 months, it became nearly every Friday, and occasionally a Saturday afternoon or evening, too. The makeup of the group also appeared to change. Jessica was brought up less, and newer names I didn't recognize began to appear. Her conduct at home also started to shift, though it was like a slow tide, simple to overlook daily. She became more absorbed in her phone, often smiling or rapidly typing responses. But if I asked, her replies were vague, simply a humorous group chat item, or arranging the next get-together. She began to put more effort into her look for these evenings out, new clothes, more time spent on hair and makeup. Again, I justified this as her relishing her social life. The first definite warning sign, though minor, was about 2 months ago when she set a new, intricate password on her phone. We had never had passwords that the other didn't know, not because we made a habit of checking up on each other, but purely for ease and transparency. When I questioned her about it, she dismissed it, stating her phone software updated and urged her to use a more secure lock. It seemed a bit odd, but I didn't press the issue. Then about 3 weeks ago, I was reviewing our shared account for some job-related expense claims. I noted a sequence of charges at a cocktail bar called Crimson Lounge Pseudonym, a spot I'd never heard her talk about, and certainly not the sort of place her longtime friend Jessica would visit. There were 4 such transactions across a 6-week span, consistently on a Friday or Saturday evening. Alongside these were Uber receipts for rides to and from an address in a fashionable but somewhat remote part of the city, an area she had no other plausible reason to visit, especially late in the evening. The sums weren't huge, but the pattern was distinct from her typical spending. I made a mental note, a growing feeling of unease starting to solidify, but I was in the middle of a critical project deadline, working almost around the clock, and I guess I pushed the immediate confrontation down. The situation culminated 2 nights ago. It was a Friday. Sarah had gone out for another girls' night. She arrived home around 3 a.m. I was in bed, pretending to sleep, but I was wide awake. Work stress was a part of it, but the main reason was this gnawing anxiety that had been building for weeks. She was noticeably tipsy, humming to herself as she got ready for bed. She placed her phone on her nightstand, screen up. A few moments later, it buzzed with a notification. I glanced over. The screen was lit, and a message preview was visible. It was from a contact named David H., and the visible text read, "Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." I didn't shout. I didn't even raise my voice. I just lay there for a moment, the words burning into my mind. Then I asked, quite calmly, "Sarah, who is David H.?" She physically jumped, startled. She turned to look at me. The color immediately drained from her face. Her initial reaction was denial. She stammered, "David? Oh, he's simply a friend of Stephanie's from the group. He occasionally joins us," I responded just as calmly. I saw the message. "Sarah, tonight was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you." That doesn't sound like a casual acquaintance from a group outing. That's when the facade shattered. She sat on the bed's edge, facing away from me, and began to sob. The confession emerged in fractured pieces, a rush of tears, apologies, and excuses. She had been having an affair with this man, David, for the last 4 months. He was someone she encountered at the Crimson Lounge during one of her evenings out, an evening when, evidently, her girlfriends were not there. Some of those later girls' nights had been solely with him. She spoke of feeling isolated because of my long work hours, of feeling overlooked and undervalued. She claimed David gave her attention, made her feel lively and energetic once more. She kept repeating that it was a terrible error, that she loved me, that she didn't want to ruin our family, our life together. I mostly listened in quiet. Our children were sleeping soundly in their rooms, entirely oblivious that their world was breaking apart. I didn't touch her. I didn't utter much beyond posing a few clarifying questions about the timeline. Yesterday morning, after an utterly sleepless night passed in separate rooms, I went to the guest room. The apologies persisted. She looked awful, her eyes red and swollen. She kept stating she would do anything to mend it. And then, amid this presumed regret, she put forward her solution. She asked, her voice trembling but with a hint of desperate hope, if we could consider an open marriage. She contended that her feelings for David were genuine and important, but that she also loved me and wanted to keep our family whole. An open marriage, she proposed, would let her carry on her relationship with David openly, and I would be able to seek other connections as well if I wished. She presented it as a forward-thinking, mature approach to manage a complicated emotional state, a way to bypass the damaging course of divorce. I was left without words. It seemed as though she was seeking my approval to carry on her affair, to make it official, to somehow integrate this other man into the structure of our lives. I informed her I required time. I could not provide her with a response. So here I am presently, in my tiny home office, with the door shut. Lily and Tom are watching Saturday morning cartoons downstairs. Sarah is moving about in the kitchen, her presence a steady, burdensome weight. She's attempting to appear normal for the children, but it's a very slight facade. My thoughts are rushing. What are the consequences? How do I even start to tackle this? My instant gut reaction to the open marriage concept is disgust, but I am also attempting to think tactically. What if refusing directly causes her to leave at once? What about the children? My chief concern must be their stability and welfare. I work grueling hours. How would I cope as a single father? The idea is too much to bear. Has anyone else faced such a situation? An affair followed not only by a confession, but by a plea to bring the affair partner into the marriage framework? What initial actions should I pursue? Update 1. 3 weeks have passed since I posted my original predicament here. The flood of comments, counsel, and private messages was immense, and I wish to convey my genuine thanks. Reviewing so many varied viewpoints, some severe, some understanding, some fiercely practical, aided me in piercing the first haze of shock and hurt. It brought me to understand that while my particular circumstances seem distinct and solitary, the fundamental issues of disloyalty and tough decisions are regrettably widespread. A few repeated queries and matters needing clarification arose, so I will tackle those initially. Numerous people inquired if there were earlier indications of Sarah's unhappiness, or if we had thought about therapy prior to this. In retrospect, her heightened wish for girls' nights and some general remarks about feeling trapped in a routine could be seen as indicators. Nonetheless, she never conveyed profound discontent or solitude to me directly, in a manner that implied our marriage was facing grave issues. Each time I inquired if all was well, or if she wished to speak, she would typically respond that she was merely fatigued or strained by the children. We had not contemplated therapy. I truly believed, perhaps foolishly, that we possessed a fundamentally robust, if occasionally strained, marriage. Her apology, as I mentioned, was full of tears and self-blame, but its closeness to the open marriage proposal in hindsight stained its genuineness for me. It began to feel less like genuine sorrow for the disloyalty and more like regret for being discovered, followed by a swift shift to her preferred result, remaining a partner under conditions she deemed fair, without losing the stability of her marriage and family. She described her feelings for David as something that had caught her off guard and that she was deeply torn, thinking an open setup was the only path that didn't involve destroying everyone's lives. The most frequent counsel, and the one that aligned most closely with my desire for tangible steps, was to seek legal counsel. I set up a meeting within 2 days of my initial post. I located a respected family law attorney via a bar association recommendation. That 60-minute consultation was perhaps the most illuminating and empowering hour I've experienced in months. The attorney was forthright, skilled, and clarified the legal framework of divorce, custody, and monetary agreements in our state. She advised me, regardless of any efforts towards reconciliation, to start carefully recording everything: Sarah's behavior, my engagement with the children, monetary outlays, and any correspondence concerning her affair or the open marriage suggestion. She stated that such records might be essential in safeguarding my interests, and, importantly, the children's interests, should divorce become the path forward. She also talked about the possible effects of an open marriage arrangement on divorce cases, mentioning it might make things harder, but that proof of previous infidelity and present actions would still be very important. Following that meeting, and after days spent going over comments here and reflecting on the damage to my marriage, I reached a tough choice. The idea of an open marriage, especially one started by infidelity and so plainly skewed in Sarah's favor, was something I truly could not agree to. Still, an instant, forceful confrontation or complete refusal of her offer also seemed hazardous. I was concerned she might grow more secretive, or that it could prompt a hasty choice from her that would harm the children before I was ready. Thus, I developed a plan, a strategy my lawyer recognized as a sensible, though emotionally draining method for the near future. 1. I let Sarah know that I was open to thinking about her open marriage offer. I picked my words with care. I did not state that I concurred. I conveyed that it was an extreme idea, that I was still dealing with the affair, and that if we were to even start looking into such a course, It would demand tremendous effort, expert guidance, and complete transparency from her. I mentioned I would need time to reflect, to investigate, and to see if I could even consider such a concept. I put forward that a condition would be her disclosing everything to me about David, their connection, and her hopes. I also proposed the thought of us getting couples therapy specifically to handle this, fully aware this was a stalling strategy on my end. The main aim here was not to rescue the marriage through this method, but to gain myself time, to stop her from becoming stubborn or attempting to conceal her deeds more, and to enable me to start my own preparations. 2. Following my lawyer's firm advice, I retained a licensed and respected private investigation company. This was a major move, and not one I made casually, but I grasped its importance. Their assignment was to subtly record Sarah's actions, specifically her encounters and dealings with David, her hours away from home, particularly when she was meant to be looking after the children, and any overall behavior that might be interpreted as neglect of her parental duties or improper use of marital property. They commenced their operations roughly 2 weeks ago. The expense is substantial, but I see it as a commitment to achieving a just result for myself and my children. 3. I have grown exceptionally meticulous about record keeping. I began a safe digital diary, password protected and copied. Within it, I record daily entries, Sarah's arrivals and departures, the reasons she provides, her degree of involvement with the children, her disposition, any important discussions, summarized as precisely as possible, and duplicates of texts or emails connected to her affair or arrangements with David. I also monitor my own actions, especially all I accomplish for and alongside the children. At the same time, I have implemented significant, noticeable alterations to my own timetable to take on the position of main caregiver. This proved the most difficult in terms of logistics. I held several open talks with my immediate manager in the HR department, clarifying that I was handling a grave family issue that necessitated me having more consistent hours and reduced travel for the near future. I did not reveal the particulars of the affair, but highlighted the requirement to be the steady parent for my children. They showed surprising comprehension and have granted me some adaptability, which entails me laboring with intense concentration during work hours and then carrying on remotely deep into the night once the children are sleeping. I now manage all morning routines for Lily and Tom, including breakfast, preparing them in the school journey. I collect them from school or post-school engagements. I am present at every school gathering, every medical consultation. I prepare their evening meals, assist with schoolwork, and oversee their nightly rituals. This change isn't only for legal advantage. My kids are my top priority, and they require stability and an involved parent, now more than ever. 4. On my lawyer's recommendation, I've also acted to completely grasp and safeguard our financial status. I've collected duplicates of all bank records, investment documents, credit card statements, tax filings, and property titles for the last 5 years. I met with a financial consultant on my own to comprehend my personal financial position and to prepare for possible future circumstances. I started a distinct bank account under my name for my pay deposits from now on, even though I keep on contributing to shared household costs from our current joint account, watching it carefully for any odd withdrawals by Sarah. Sarah's response to my declaration that I would think about her offer was one of reassurance. It was as though a huge burden had been removed from her. She truly appears to think that I am receptive to this concept in our lives. Consequently, she has grown surprisingly frank about her current relationship with David. She'll casually remark, "Oh, David and I intend to check out that new XYZ spot on Friday," or David experienced is truly taxing day at his workplace. Listening to his name, uttered so openly in our house, is a perpetual, unsettling recall of the predicament. It requires a considerable degree of self-restraint to keep a poker face. She has made no real efforts towards the transparency or trust building I mentioned as conditions. Her version of transparency is simply informing me of her plans with him, apparently expecting my approval. The private investigator has already provided several updates. They are professionals and have been discreet. Their initial reports indicate frequent meetings between Sarah and David, both during daytime hours when she is supposedly running errands. They have photographic evidence of them together, at restaurants, parks, and entering and leaving a specific apartment building, which they believe to be David's residence. More concerningly, they have recorded 2 instances in the past week where Sarah assigned childcare to a hastily arranged babysitter, once for Tom's after-school soccer practice pickup, and once for an evening when she told me she was going for an errand, while she was observed meeting David. These instances are being meticulously recorded. My greater involvement with Lily and Tom has been the one truly positive development in this situation. They have responded well to the consistency and my focused attention. Lily, who is quite perceptive, has commented a few times, "Mommy goes out a lot now, and you pick us up from school all the time. Daddy, I like that." I've kept my answers vague and reassuring, avoiding any negative comments about Sarah. The truth is, it's exhausting. I am essentially acting as a full-time single parent while managing a high-pressure job and the huge emotional strain of this duplicitous existence. Sleep is a luxury. The atmosphere within our home is deeply surreal. We are roommates who share children and a history. Sarah is often buoyant, almost cheerful, appearing unburdened now that her secret is out, and she believes a path has been cleared for her to get what she wants. She engages in small talk about groceries or school notices. There are no substantive discussions about our marriage, our past, or our future, apart from her occasional hopeful comments about how people make all sorts of arrangements work these days. My lawyer is pleased with the course we are taking and the caliber of the information being collected. He has emphasized that showing a steady pattern of me being the main caregiver, combined with proof of Sarah's continuing affair and any related neglect or monetary misconduct, will greatly boost my standing if this moves to a contested divorce, especially regarding child custody and spousal support demands. How long I can maintain this delicate balance, I do not know. Each day is a performance. But for now, this is the strategy. The goal is clear: to protect my children, safeguard their future, and make sure that if our marriage concludes, it ends on terms that are fair and mirroring the reality of Sarah's decisions, not her perfect vision of an open life resting on my quiet suffering. Thank you again for the opportunity to write this. I expect a long journey ahead and will update again when there are significant developments. Update 2, final update. It has been 14 months since my original post, which feels like a lifetime ago, and approximately 13 months since I provided my first update. The journey since then has been full of difficulties, but it has reached its legal conclusion, and I believe it's appropriate to share the final outcomes, both for my own sense of closure and for those who invested their time and thoughts in my situation. The 3 months following my last update were perhaps the most challenging phase of this entire ordeal. I continued the charade of considering Sarah's open marriage proposal while living under the same roof. The private investigator's work continued, yielding a comprehensive portfolio of Sarah's activities. Her involvement with David didn't just continue, it intensified. She became bolder, often staying out late on weeknights, citing various social engagements or freelance work that the PI's reports consistently revealed were rendezvous with David. There were documented weekend afternoons spent at his apartment, and even a 2-day wellness retreat she claimed to be attending with a girlfriend, which the PI confirmed was a trip taken with David to a nearby resort town. During this period, my role as the de facto sole functioning parent for Lily and Tom became more and more demanding. I handled every aspect of their lives, school schedules, homework, meals. I handled every aspect of their lives: school schedules, homework, meals, doctor visits, playdates, and emotional support. Sarah's involvement with them lessened to perfunctory interactions. She was often distracted, on her phone, or simply absent. For example, Lily had a leading role in her school play, an event we had marked on the calendar for months. 2 days before, Sarah announced she had an unavoidable work commitment that evening. The PI later confirmed she was having dinner with David. I noted her absence, along with Lily's quiet disappointment. There were numerous such instances, each one a painful piece of evidence, not just for legal purposes, but of her escalating detachment from her family. The emotional toll on me was immense. Maintaining a calm, composed exterior for the children and a neutral, considering facade for Sarah, while internally processing the daily reports from the PI and managing my own grief and anger, was draining. Sleep was minimal, and stress was a constant companion. The decision to file for divorce was made in consultation with my lawyer after nearly 5 months of this. We had a considerable collection of evidence, thorough timelines, photographic and video evidence from the PI, financial records illustrating her expenditures on David, including cash withdrawals prior to her outings, and charges for gifts and meals I could link to their meetings, and my own comprehensive log of her parental absenteeism compared to my full-time caregiving. My lawyer was certain we had a very compelling case, not merely for divorce on grounds of adultery, but for securing primary custody and arguing against significant spousal support due to her actions. The arrangements for filing were meticulously planned. I obtained a new lease on a house in the same school district to lessen disturbance for Lily and Tom. On the day of filing, while Sarah was out, supposedly at a yoga workshop, which the PI confirmed was an afternoon at David's, I moved the children and our vital belongings to the new residence. Sarah was served with divorce papers and a motion for temporary primary custody that evening when she returned to a nearly empty house. Her reaction, as conveyed to me later through legal channels, I initiated a strict no direct contact policy, with all communication to go through lawyers or a court-mandated co-parenting app for child-related logistics only, was one of absolute shock, followed by fierce anger and accusations of betrayal. She had sincerely believed I was slowly accepting her vision of an open marriage. The discovery that my apparent consideration had been a deliberate tactic to gather evidence against her was, by all accounts, a devastating blow to her narrative. The divorce proceedings were contested, though not as prolonged as they might have been, thanks to the sheer weight of our evidence. Sarah, through her legal counsel, initially pushed back hard. She sought joint physical and legal custody, significant spousal support, referencing her years as a stay-at-home mother, and a larger share of the marital assets. Her lawyer sought to invalidate the PI's evidence as an invasion of privacy and painted me as vindictive. We had multiple hearings in front of a judge. My lawyer laid out our case. The PI's testimony, supported by his detailed reports and visual evidence, was convincing and undeniable. My daily logs, matched with school attendance records, doctor's visit confirmations, all identifying me as the attending parent, and receipts for children's expenses, painted a clear picture of primary caregiving. We showed not just the affair, but an unbroken pattern of Sarah placing her relationship with David above the needs and well-being of Lily and Tom. The evidence of her spending marital funds on David, though not enormous, further bolstered our arguments. There were stressful instances, especially during cross-examinations, but the facts were unmistakable. Sarah's efforts to explain her absences or reinterpret her relationship with David failed to stand against the documented reality. Mediation was tried, but quickly broke down, as Sarah was not prepared to substantially alter her initial demands. The judge's ultimate decision, issued about 2 to 3 months ago after a final hearing, was thorough. 1. I was awarded sole legal custody, final decision-making authority, and primary physical custody of Lily and Tom. The judge's summary clearly stated the ample evidence showing my role as the steady and reliable primary caregiver for an extended duration, setting it against Sarah's proven poor judgment and preference for her own personal interests over the basic needs of her children. 2. Sarah was granted a progressive visitation schedule. To begin with, it involved alternating weekends from Friday evening to Sunday evening, and a single 4-hour midweek evening visit, which for the first 3 months was to be professionally supervised at her cost. The supervision was mandated because of the judge's expressed worries regarding her recent trend of detachment and the need to guarantee a child-centered setting during her time with the children. After 3 months of compliant, supervised visits, the oversight was lifted. All handovers of the children were to take place at an impartial public venue or be arranged by a jointly agreed-upon third person to reduce direct interaction between Sarah and me. 3. Sarah had sought spousal support amounting to 40% of my net income for a 10-year duration. Her lawyer contended this was warranted by her extended time away from employment to raise children. My lawyer responded by presenting evidence of her graphic design skills, though seldom utilized, her comparatively youthful age and capacity for employment, the brief period during which she had been a full-time SOM, before her focus notably changed, and, most importantly, her behavior. The judge granted Sarah transitional alimony for a duration of just 18 months, at an amount considerably less than she sought, approximately 15% of her original request. The judge noted that while her time as a homemaker was a factor, her neglect of parental duties and the circumstances of the marriage's end, including the monetary improprieties linked to the affair, directly influenced the length of the award. He basically determined that she had weakened her own case by her conduct. 4. Marital assets were split, mostly following state guidelines, but the judge did make an allowance in my favor to factor in the marital funds Sarah had provably spent on her relationship with David, travel, costly meals, presents. This wasn't a huge amount overall, but it was a recognition of the monetary effect of her affair. The marital home was mandated to be sold, and the net worth split after these changes. I used my share to cover the down payment on my current house and create a secure financial foundation for myself and the children. From what I understand via the co-parenting app, which is solely for practical arrangements, and at times from impartial third-party contacts, Sarah moved in with David soon after the divorce was completed, and she needed to leave the sold marital home. They live in an apartment. Her financial situation is reportedly vastly different from what she had grown used to. The temporary alimony is quite small, and David's earnings, along with any occasional freelance jobs Sarah might be doing, seem inadequate to support anything resembling her previous way of life. The initial passion and thrill of their relationship is currently, by certain reports, encountering the everyday stresses of living together, money worries, and the effects of her decisions concerning the kids. Her visits with Lily and Tom align with the court's directive. The exchanges during drop-offs, which I now have my sister or a reliable friend manage to prevent direct contact, are characterized as courteous, but tense. The kids are civil towards her, but their main connection and feeling of safety are clearly with me. Life for Lily, Tom, and me has found a new, steady routine. Our house, though smaller than our old one, has turned into a warm and happy home. My work circumstances have changed. I use the crisis to arrange a position with more reasonable hours and much less travel, letting me be a truly involved father. It involved a minor cut in salary and possibly a slower career path, but the exchange for my children's welfare is one I'd choose every single time. They are flourishing. They are performing well in school, have a solid group of friends, and even though the divorce was certainly a tough time for them, They have displayed amazing resilience. Our connections are firmer than ever. I wish to thank this community once more. This will be my last post on this chapter of my life. My focus is now completely on the future, on raising my children, and on building a new life with them. But that's nothing compared to the next story. I'm using a different account for privacy. I'm a 35-year-old man. Let's call me Alex. My wife, Carmilla, is 33. We've been married for 5 years and together for 8. Until recently, I believed we had a steady, if at times quiet life. The primary focus of this, indirectly, was our dog, Buddy. Buddy was a Labrador mix. I had owned him for roughly 14 years. He was with me before Carmilla, and I had even met. He was an old, quiet dog, a constant presence in my life and later in ours. Carmilla also came to love him, even though he was always, in a way, my dog. Outside my professional life, I have a major hobby, a YouTube channel. It's not something that earns much money, not yet anyway, but it's a profound passion. I create detailed video essays about retro video game history and preservation. This involves extensive research, script writing, capturing footage from original hardware, editing, and voiceover work. The hard drive Carmilla erased held roughly 2 full years of ongoing projects, archived material, raw footage, edited videos, and all my planning documents. Some of it was backed up infrequently, but a huge amount of recent, irreplaceable work from the past several months, including the nearly finished major project, existed solely on that primary drive. I'm not someone who shows emotions in a very outward or loud manner. I tend to process matters internally. This is pertinent. Buddy's health had been deteriorating for the greater part of a year. It began with him slowing down. Then his arthritis grew more severe. There were numerous vet visits, medications, special diets. I managed most of the practicalities of his care, researching treatments, overseeing his medication schedule, and adapting our home to enhance his comfort. Carmilla was often visibly distressed during this time, frequently tearful when observing Buddy or following vet appointments. I was naturally profoundly saddened by his decline, but my attention was on his comfort and managing his pain. Around 3 weeks ago, following a particularly tough night for Buddy, the vet confirmed what we both understood was inevitable. His quality of life was severely diminished, and there was little else that could be done to ease his suffering. We made the shared decision to euthanize him. I scheduled the appointment for the next afternoon. Carmilla was highly emotional, weeping intermittently as it approached. I concentrated on making Buddy's final day as comfortable as possible, offering him his preferred treats, and spending calm moments with him. At the veterinary clinic, the staff were empathetic. Carmilla was openly weeping throughout the procedure. I was present, stroking Buddy, speaking to him gently as he drifted off to sleep. I felt a deep sense of loss, a silent devastation, but I did not shed tears. I did not weep or lose control. I remained composed. After the vet confirmed Buddy had passed, I made arrangements for his cremation and for his ashes to be returned to us. The car ride home was tense. Carmilla was still weeping, but then she faced me and asked how I could simply sit there without shedding a tear. She said it seemed as if it didn't even impact me. I tried to clarify that I was deeply affected, very much so, but I just processed grief in my own way, that my sorrow wasn't for public display. She didn't appear to accept this. During the following week, the atmosphere at home grew progressively strained. Carmilla was distant, sometimes making cutting remarks about my apparent lack of emotion. She made comments such as, "You're like a machine sometimes," or "It's like nothing can touch you." I repeated that I was grieving, but it wasn't a show. I was attempting to give her room for her own grief, presuming she needed it. I focused on my job and my YouTube projects, partly as a coping mechanism, partly because I had self-imposed deadlines. The main event occurred last Tuesday, about 10 days after Buddy's passing. I returned home from work. Carmilla was waiting in the living room. She had an odd, almost defiant expression on her face. She began by stating she had been quite concerned for me, that my response to Buddy's death was abnormal, that it wasn't natural to not weep in that situation. She said she felt as though she no longer knew who I was. Then she informed me she had done something. She motioned toward my office. She said she needed to see me experience something, truly break down and display emotion. She then declared, quite simply, that she had erased my primary YouTube project hard drive. This drive held, as I noted, my primary YouTube project hard drive. This drive held, as I noted, 2 years of careful work, hundreds, perhaps thousands of hours. She said words to the effect of, "I just wanted to see you fall apart. I needed to see that you could experience loss. It's good for you to finally display some feeling." I remember simply staring at her. I walked into my office, turned on my computer, and checked the drive. It was entirely blank, formatted. 2 years of work simply vanished. The unprocessed footage from my current series, the finished timelines, the study notes, scripts, assets, all of it. My latest full backup was, to my dismay, about 4 months old, meaning the last 4 months of dedicated work, including a nearly complete 40-minute documentary video, were completely and absolutely lost. My reaction was not what she apparently anticipated. I did not weep or shout. I felt a cold, nauseating wave sweep over me. It was a feeling of deep betrayal and violation. This wasn't merely data. It was my time, my passion, and my creation. She had deliberately ruined something exceptionally significant to me, something she understood was important, to elicit a particular response from me, to correct what she saw as my emotional deficiency. I faced her. I don't remember my precise words, but I informed her that her actions were foolish, and that I couldn't grasp why she would do something like that. She then began to appear somewhat unsure, perhaps understanding she had made a mistake. She started to say something about simply wanting me to be all right, to get in touch with my feelings. I didn't respond further. I headed to our bedroom and packed a small bag with clothes and necessities. Carmilla came after me, beginning to sound frantic. She claimed she hadn't understood, that she was just so distressed about Buddy and me, and she believed if I could simply cry, everything would improve. Her excuses seemed empty and self-centered. I informed her that I could not remain in the same house with her. I stepped out, entered my car, and drove to a close-by hotel. I've been there ever since. The following morning, Wednesday, I reached out to a divorce lawyer and had an initial meeting. I described the circumstances. The attorney was, to say the least, astonished by the details. I'd begun legal proceedings. I sent Carmilla a short text message saying that I had departed, was secure, had consulted legal advice, and that any additional communication should go through them for now. This brings me up to the present moment. It's been just over a week since I departed. Carmilla has been inundating my phone with calls and texts, which I've mostly disregarded. She has also attempted to contact me via my sister and a few shared friends. They have conveyed that she is distressed and full of regret. Yesterday, my sister gave me a lengthy handwritten letter from Carmilla. In it, Carmilla expressed that she now grasps the full extent of her actions. She wrote that her conduct arose from her own profound insecurities and a distorted view of my sorrow, or its absence in her opinion. She mentioned she felt that if I didn't grieve Buddy in a manner she comprehended, it implied I didn't genuinely care for him, or by association her. She asserts that wrecking my drive was a desperate, ill-advised effort to compel an emotional bond she sensed was absent, originating from her own apprehension and sorrow. She states she has already sought out and completed an initial session with a therapist. She is pleading with me to halt the divorce proceedings and participate in marriage counseling with her. She says she will do anything to regain my trust, though she admits it might be impossible. I am still recovering from the deception. The ruin of my work is one matter. The reasoning behind it is quite different. To deliberately harm someone to provoke a specific emotional reaction, feels manipulative and cruel to a degree I'm finding hard to comprehend. The lawyer has informed me that, legally speaking, this destructive act might be seen as a dissipation of assets, though the worth of a passion project is difficult to measure in such terms. It's more about the motive and the transgression. Nevertheless, she is my wife. We have established a life together over 8 years. Prior to this, I would never have conceived of her being capable of such an action. Could grief and insecurity truly drive someone to act so uncharacteristically? Her letter appears to convey sincere regret, and she has independently taken steps to seek therapy. Therefore, my query is, am I utterly irrational to even contemplate halting the divorce and trying marriage counseling? Or is this deed so flagrant that concluding the marriage is the sole logical reaction? I require some external viewpoint. Update 1. Firstly, I wish to express my thanks to everyone who dedicated time to read my initial post and provide their insights. The viewpoints were diverse, spanning from immediate and absolute divorce to thoughts of counseling, with many opinions situated in the middle. Your contributions have been precious as I navigate this situation. I must clarify a few matters that arose often in the comments, as my first post was penned while I was still in a state of dismay and perhaps didn't address everything sufficiently. 1. Many inquired about the character and importance of the channel and the lost information. It was not merely a casual pastime. Although it wasn't my main income stream, I possessed a small but devoted audience, approximately 15K subscribers, and I was starting to monetize it moderately. More significantly, it served as a substantial creative outlet, and something I invested countless hours into purely for the intense passion it inspired. As previously stated, I had a backup, but it dated from early July. The span between July and October was highly productive. I had finished the primary recording and initial compilation of a significant 2-part documentary series I'd invested over a year into, along with several shorter videos. All the distinctive footage recorded, the project files, updated scripts, and particular assets for these projects. Those are what's lost. The estimate of 2 years of work pertains to the core material on the drive, but the most severe loss is those 4 months of focused recent advancement. Some inquired about the possibility of data retrieval. I spoke with an expert. Since it was a standard format and not a physically harmed drive, the likelihood of retrieving anything significant is practically 0. 2. I'm not lacking emotion. I feel things deeply. However, my way of showing sorrow, or in fact many intense feelings, is often subdued and private. When Buddy died, I was devastated. He was my companion for nearly half my life. My way of paying tribute to him was to make certain his end was calm and to recollect him with affection, not through external demonstrations of sadness. Carmilla has known me for 8 years. My more reserved temperament isn't unfamiliar to her, though perhaps she never completely grasped or embraced it, especially under the strain of her own sorrow. 3. Several individuals who commented inquired if there had been earlier warning signs or comparable actions from Carmilla. Honestly, no. Nothing of this magnitude, or even hinting at this kind of damaging or controlling action. We had our usual marital disagreements, times she felt insecure or sought reassurance. But she never intentionally sabotaged my things or acted with such deliberate cruelty. This made the whole incident intensely shocking and disorienting. After sharing my story and reading numerous replies, I spent considerable time reflecting. My anger and sense of betrayal are still quite vivid. Many replies supported my initial feeling to pursue the divorce, underlining the seriousness of the broken trust. Some others suggested that should Carmilla's remorse prove genuine, and her commitment to therapy and understanding her actions be true, counseling might provide a route to understanding, though perhaps not to reconciliation. My lawyer had already submitted the first divorce papers. Carmilla was served the papers shortly following my original post. This, I believe, truly emphasized the situation's seriousness for her. I resolved that prior to making an irreversible choice to finalize the divorce without further discussion, I would arrange a meeting with Carmilla. I had to see her, to hear her directly beyond the filter of texts or letters. I agreed to meet her just last week. I made it clear this wasn't a reconciliation meeting, but a chance for me to listen before I decided my next steps concerning the counseling she'd requested. When we met, Carmilla was clearly upset. She made no attempt to excuse what she had requested. When we met, Carmilla was clearly upset. She made no attempt to excuse her actions. She repeated much of what was in her letter, explaining that her sorrow for Buddy, coupled with her view of my stoicism as a lack of love or care, had caused her to act from a place of deep fear and insecurity. She said she felt she was losing me, that I was emotionally distant, and in a warped way she believed that by forcing a strong emotional reaction, any reaction, it would somehow bridge that perceived gap or prove I still cared. She discussed her initial therapy sessions and how she was starting to examine these insecurities and her unhealthy ways of coping. She presented me with appointment cards for upcoming therapy sessions. She cried, offered repeated apologies, and stated she'd understand if I could never forgive her, but begged for an opportunity to mend the harm through joint counseling. She clearly affirmed she knew she could not undo the destruction of my work, and that it was a terrible thing to do. I listened without speaking much for a long time. Then I presented my stance. I told her that trust, once broken to this extent, is not easily, if ever, completely rebuilt. I clarified the gravity of the transgression, not solely against my work, but also against my personal limits and her position as my partner. I informed her that even if we tried counseling, the divorce process would stay active, simply put on hold. I would not be returning to the house at this point. I then outlined my terms should I consent to counseling. 1. She must unfailingly continue her individual therapy. 2. We would jointly choose a marriage counselor, prioritizing one skilled in matters of trust and communication. I would retain the ultimate decision if we couldn't agree. 3. There were to be no expectations of instant forgiveness or a return to our prior state. This would be a lengthy, difficult journey with no certain result. 4. I would require consistent, evident change in her conduct, comprehension, and responsibility. Any pressure or effort to expedite the process would lead to me instantly resuming the divorce proceedings. 5. We would need to set up clear boundaries concerning personal space, projects, and how emotions are expressed. I clarified that my readiness to even attempt counseling depended on her strict observance of these conditions, and that I was approaching this with profound doubt. I also informed her that the YouTube project, in its current form, is defunct for me at present. The idea of attempting to reconstruct it fills me with a feeling of exhaustion linked to this incident. Carmilla accepted all conditions without a moment's pause. She seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation and how fragile this opportunity was. She thanked me for even being open to considering it. So, this is our current position. I've directed my lawyer to pause the divorce proceedings, awaiting the results of a genuine effort at marriage counseling. We have a list of prospective therapists we're examining. It feels more like selecting the marginally less awful route from two highly challenging choices. A part of me believes this is a huge error, yet another part senses I owe it to our 8 years together before this, to at least investigate if anything can be saved, particularly given her swift engagement in therapy and stated regret. I'm uncertain if I'm making the correct decision. Update 2. Approximately 6 months have passed since my last update, which I now inwardly call D-Day. I felt it was fitting to offer an update on the circumstances, as many individuals dedicated their time and thoughts to my initial posts. Much has occurred, yet in certain respects, it feels as though we've merely commenced a very lengthy journey. As I noted in my previous update, Carmilla and I consented to attempt marriage counseling, and she was meant to carry on with her individual therapy. Both of these elements have been occurring steadily. We located a marriage counselor specializing in relationship trauma and communication failures. The sessions, both shared and sometimes individual, as suggested by the counselor to work through particular issues before bringing them back to joint sessions, have been exceptionally difficult. There are no gentle terms for it. It's been painful, raw, and profoundly uncomfortable for both of us. Carmilla's individual therapy has been vital, as stated by our marriage counselor, and from what Carmilla has shared, with her consent, often within our joint sessions. She has explored deep-seated insecurities that predate our relationship, originating from her upbringing and previous relational patterns. Her fear of abandonment and her inclination to catastrophize any sensed emotional distance from me were seemingly key triggers. The act of destroying my YouTube project, she has come to realize in therapy, was a profoundly dysfunctional and destructive protest behavior, an effort to compel a connection and reassurance when she felt extremely insecure and unseen, particularly following her intense grief over Buddy and her misunderstanding of my own grieving process. This is naturally an explanation, not an excuse, a difference our counselor has stressed repeatedly. On my side, the counseling has prompted me to examine my own communication style. While I maintain my belief that my internal grieving process is valid, I've gained insight into how my stoicism and sometimes reserved nature can be perceived by a partner, especially one with established insecurities like Carmilla's. It has been clarified that I am not accountable for Carmilla's actions, but grasping the dynamic from both sides has been an element of the therapeutic process. There's been a great deal of focus on how we convey, or neglect to convey, needs and emotions in a healthier way. Regarding tangible actions and shifts, Carmilla has been consistent. She hasn't missed any therapy sessions, whether individual or joint. She has actively participated, even when it's been challenging for her to confront her own behavior and its impact. Guided by our counselor, she wrote me another letter, this time not of apology but of accountability. It outlined her understanding of the particular harm she caused, the breach of trust, the disrespect for my passion and work, the emotional manipulation inherent in her act, and the fear it instilled in me. This was a challenging letter for her to write and for me to read, but it felt more concrete than just verbal apologies. Concerning the YouTube project, I haven't been able to find the will to try to remake it again. I did manage to retrieve some older RAW files from various SD cards and a cloud backup I'd forgotten about. But it isn't the same. Living arrangements. For the first 3 months of counseling, I rented a short-term apartment and remained there, and after extensive discussion, both in and out of therapy, and seeing a consistent pattern of effort from Carmilla, I agreed to a change. About 3 months ago, I moved back into our house, but into the guest bedroom. The divorce proceedings officially remain on hold. My lawyer is informed about the ongoing counseling and our present living arrangement. There is no discussion of withdrawing the divorce filing at this point. That step, if it ever happens, is quite distant. This will probably be my final update for the near future, or maybe ever. The journey forward is lengthy and personal. Thank you to everyone who listened and shared their insights. It was useful to share this somewhere during the first shock. Update 3, hello again, Reddit. It has been a considerable amount of time since my previous update, about 1 year and 4 months. When I last posted, my wife Carmilla and I were residing as housemates while undergoing marriage counseling after her destructive act of erasing my YouTube hard drive. I truly didn't know then if our marriage would survive, or even if it ought to. Many of you provided counsel, and I know the situation seemed bleak. I believed it was important to provide a final chapter to this story, considering how invested many of you were in reading about it. The past 1.5 years has been the most difficult period of our lives, individually and as a couple. We fully dedicated ourselves to the marriage counseling, and Carmilla maintained her intensive individual therapy. There were numerous hours of difficult conversations, uncomfortable self-examination on both our parts, and moments where it felt like the gap between us was too vast to span. After about 6 months of residing separately under the same roof, with steady positive interactions and advances in therapy, we started spending more meaningful time together. It began with shared meals, then evenings talking, truly talking, in a way we hadn't for years. Eventually, the guest room door remained open more frequently than not. The restoration of emotional intimacy gradually paved the way for physical intimacy's return. Around 8 months ago, I moved back into our shared bedroom. The divorce proceedings were formally withdrawn approximately 6 months ago. Following an extensive discussion with our therapist, and then between us, we both felt assured that we were constructing something new and more robust. My lawyer was, I believe, somewhat surprised but supportive when I directed him to submit the dismissal. What about the YouTube project? The origin of so much pain. For an extended period, I couldn't compel myself to even contemplate it. Nevertheless, approximately 6 months ago, Carmilla did something unanticipated. She had discovered an old notebook where I'd jotted down some initial concepts for that lost documentary series. She hadn't attempted to rewrite it or anything similar. She had simply meticulously scanned the pages and arranged them, along with some public domain images and research links she believed might be pertinent, into a new folder on a new external drive. She offered it to me, not as a push to restart, but as a token, stating she knew she couldn't restore what was lost, but she wished to support my passion in a wholesome way, if and when I ever felt prepared. Our life now is content. It's a word I was reluctant to use for an extended period, but it's accurate. We communicate more openly and truthfully than ever before. The trust, which I thought was irreparably shattered, has been rebuilt, piece by piece. I wanted to share this outcome because so many of you were candid in your advice, and I felt a responsibility to close the loop. For those who said such a betrayal was insurmountable, I understand your perspective entirely, and for a long time I believed it myself. But for us, with intensive therapy, genuine remorse, a willingness to change from Carmilla, and my willingness to eventually look beyond the act of the person I married, we found a path back. This is my final update. We are moving forward, together and happy. Thank you, Reddit, for being a sounding board during the darkest time. I wish you all well. Let's move on to another unbelievable story. I'm Nancy, 28F, my former fiancé, Jacob, 29OM, and I had been a couple for 7 years. Our wedding was scheduled for yesterday. Jacob's closest childhood friend, Chloe, 29F, had always played a notable role in his life. Within our relationship, her constant presence often caused slight tension. Jacob routinely dismissed her actions by saying, "That's just Chloe," and I frequently felt my worries were minimized or ignored. Apart from the problems arising from Chloe's involvement, our relationship had been steady, and we'd spent more than a year organizing our wedding. Throughout the years, many incidents involving Chloe made me uneasy. These weren't isolated events, but rather created a pattern that, looking back, was troubling. For instance, roughly 2 years back, I was getting ready for a vital work presentation. Jacob was supposed to assist me in reviewing my slides the evening prior. Chloe rang Jacob in hysterics, asserting a small plumbing problem in her apartment amounted to a disaster. Jacob departed instantly to aid her, remaining for numerous hours. That disaster turned out to be a dripping faucet a building superintendent could have managed. I ended up preparing by myself, feeling like an afterthought. On a different occasion, during what should have been a celebratory dinner for our 5th anniversary, Chloe appeared uninvited. She stated that Jacob had told her our location, and she just happened to be nearby. The meal transformed from a romantic night into Jacob and Chloe, recalling their younger years, leaving me feeling excluded. Jacob saw no problem with this, asserting Chloe was like family. Chloe also tended to make remarks that appeared crafted to subtly diminish me or our partnership. She would often commend Jacob's former girlfriends in front of me or tell jokes about Jacob's wilder times before we met, frequently winking at him as though they shared a private joke. Whenever I voiced my unease to Jacob, he would typically respond that Chloe didn't intend any harm and that I was overreacting. He seldom, if ever, confronted her actions head-on. The wedding's planning phase intensified these problems. Chloe held firm views on numerous elements, from the location to the invitee list, and Jacob frequently appeared to yield to her wishes, or urge me to accept them for the sake of harmony. She demanded significant involvement in duties typically managed by the wedding party or the couple themselves, such as joining Jacob at his suit fitting, where she seemingly rejected his initial selection. The wedding day arrived yesterday. I was in the bridal room with my bridesmaids and my mother, preparing. Roughly an hour before the service was set to begin, I got a text from an unfamiliar number. It featured a sequence of screenshots showing a supposed private message exchange. Within these fake messages, I seemed to be admitting to an active affair and voicing uncertainties about wedded life with Jacob. The message with it from the unknown number said, "Thought you should see what she's really like. This is being talked about among the guests." My maid of honor, Anne, noticed my distress, and I showed her the message. She was appalled. A few minutes later, another bridesmaid got a text from her cousin, who was already at the location, asking if the wedding was still happening, because someone named Chloe had started a group chat with many wedding attendees and sent them screenshots claiming Nancy was unfaithful to Jacob. It became evident that Chloe was responsible and had intentionally shared this information with guests arriving for our wedding. Anne and my mother were trying to grasp what was occurring, suggesting we locate Jacob at once. I left the bridal suite, found my brother, and asked him to fetch Jacob and bring him to a small private room next to the main hall. I wished to avoid seeing anyone else. When Jacob appeared, he seemed agitated, likely from being pulled away from greeting guests. I showed him the screenshots on my phone and clarified what Chloe had done, that she had sent this to the guests. His first response was a nervous chuckle. He stated, "Come on, Nancy, you know Chloe. She has a weird sense of humor. It's probably just some stupid, elaborate prank. She wouldn't really try to stop the wedding." I gazed at him, expecting more. I inquired if he believed this was a joke. I asked him what he planned to do about it, about Chloe, about the guests who now believed I was unfaithful. He ran a hand through his hair and said, "Look, we're just minutes from the ceremony. Let's not make a scene. We can discuss it later. It's just Chloe being Chloe. Don't let her spoil our day. Just disregard it for now." He made no effort to confront Chloe, to address the guests, or even to acknowledge the seriousness of her actions. His priorities seemed to be avoiding embarrassment and proceeding with the ceremony as if nothing was amiss. The composure with which he dismissed something so malicious, his immediate protection of Chloe, and his complete disregard for my public humiliation and emotional state in that moment, was a final, definitive moment. I told him that if he thought this was something that could be overlooked, or that Chloe's behavior was merely a joke, then I could not marry him. I stated that his unwillingness to defend me, to defend us against such a cruel act, spoke volumes. He began to argue, to plead, saying I was overreacting, that we were about to get married. I didn't engage further. I turned, walked out of the room, past my bewildered and concerned family members and bridesmaids in the corridor. I informed my brother I was leaving. He tried to ask what was wrong, but I simply shook my head and kept walking. I exited the venue through a side door, found a taxi, and departed. The drive away from the venue was a blur. My phone started ringing almost at once. It was Jacob. Then my mother, then my father, then Anne. I didn't answer. I couldn't speak. I checked into the first decent hotel I located. Upon reaching the room, I noticed the missed calls accumulating. Scores from Jacob, numerous from my parents and siblings, and a few from Jacob's parents. Anne messaged me, reporting widespread disorder at the location. Jacob was seemingly distraught, shifting between attempts to locate me and efforts to handle the attendees. Chloe, based on Anne's messages, was informing everyone that I had inexplicably had a change of heart, that I was unstable, and that I was fabricating charges against her to conceal my actual motives for withdrawing. My parents sought explanations from Jacob, who was reportedly overcome. Roughly 10 hours have passed since I departed the venue. I've conversed briefly with my parents, merely to confirm I'm physically unharmed, but unprepared to discuss specifics. The incessant stream of calls from Jacob has not ceased. His messages vary between confused queries, like, "Where are you? What occurred?" Accusations such as, "How could you do this to us?" to me, and pleas like, "Please return. We can resolve this." I am presently in a hotel room, endeavoring to comprehend the collapse of what was meant to be my wedding day. Jacob persists in attempting to reach me. My family remains stunned and anticipates a complete account. I've gotten messages from friends who attended, some perplexed, others already favoring one side due to Chloe's version of events. Chloe is deliberately portraying me as the antagonist who unexpectedly sabotaged the wedding. Jacob's inability to defend me, his downplaying of Chloe's malicious act, seemed like a betrayal, even more than Chloe's actions alone, which merely confirmed her long-standing attitude. So Reddit, Ida for departing my own wedding, abandoning my fiancé at the altar because he disregarded his best friend's intentional, public, and untrue accusation of my unfaithfulness as a joke and anticipated my proceeding with the ceremony. Update 1. Roughly a week has gone by since I posted. I wish to thank everyone who commented and messaged me. Reviewing the replies offered some insight during a highly tumultuous period. Many of you requested clarification, and I'll touch on a few frequent questions. Firstly, to clarify the spread of the untrue information, Chloe didn't just send the contrived screenshots to just a handful of people. She created a large group chat that comprised a notable segment of the wedding guests, friends and family from both sides, and shared the messages within it. She then messaged other people who were not a part of that first group. The aim was clearly to cause the most harm and embarrassment just before the ceremony. Secondly, concerning Jacob's response, when I faced him, he didn't just casually say it was a joke. He plainly instructed me to avoid creating a fuss, that I was reacting excessively, and that we should just proceed with the wedding and resolve it afterward. He appeared more focused on the outward impression of the wedding unfolding without issue than with the charge itself or my emotions. There was no instant fury from him towards Chloe, just a wish to calm me sufficiently to complete the ceremony. Several comments asked why I didn't face Chloe head-on at the location. At that time, I was completely concentrated on Jacob's response. He was the man I was set to wed. His response was, to me, the only one that mattered. Facing Chloe would have been a minor distraction. The central problem was his absence of backing and his instant defense, however subtle, of her deeds. The dominant feeling in the comments confirmed my sense that Jacob's response was not merely insufficient, but a profound treachery. It wasn't simply about Chloe's behavior, which was unquestionably spiteful, but about Jacob's decision to favor her feelings, or perhaps his desire to evade confrontation with her, above my own, even given such a harmful public assault. This was the final outcome of years of him downplaying my worries about her. My choice to leave was an instant response to that particular instant of him neglecting to support me. But the true gravity of that choice stemmed from that gathered past. The morning after the non-wedding, I switched off my phone for a few hours to halt the relentless calls from Jacob. I then called my parents and made arrangements to head to their house. I required a secure place, and I knew they would back me, even if they were still attempting to grasp the complete situation. My brother arrived to collect me. Before departing the hotel, I blocked Chloe's number and all her social media accounts. I have not made any contact with Jacob. I have observed many missed calls and messages from him and his mother. My father has also received calls from Jacob's father. Once at my parents' home, I met with them and my siblings and described everything thoroughly, from Chloe's message to Jacob's reaction and the events leading up to it. My parents did hear fragments about what was occurring during the wedding, but did not credit them. Then my father was clearly angered, chiefly at Jacob. He stated that Jacob's foremost and sole concern should have been my welfare and protecting my reputation. He wished to phone Jacob at once, but I asked him not to, at least for the present. My mother was more reserved at first. Then she confessed that Chloe had always made her profoundly uncomfortable. She recalled multiple occasions over the years where she had observed Chloe subtly attempting to marginalize me or position herself as the focus of Jacob's attention, things my mother hadn't brought up previously to avoid meddling. She said she always felt a sense of unease regarding Chloe's closeness to Jacob. Jacob's mother, Karen, left multiple voicemails on my phone before I switched it off, and then began phoning my parents' landline. My mother received one call. Karen was plainly furious, speaking of the shame we'd caused, the money wasted, and insisting I halt this foolishness and fix the situation I'd created. My mother told her clearly that I was the one who had been wronged, and that she would not discuss it further with her then. That evening, my cell phone, which I'd briefly switched back on to check for any urgent work messages or contacts unrelated to the wedding, rang. It was Jacob. I paused, and then picked up, placing it on speakerphone with my father in the room. Jacob's voice was frantic and desperate. He asked my whereabouts, why I'd departed so abruptly, and mentioned Chloe was truly distressed and felt awful that I had misjudged her motives. He began to explain it was all a big misunderstanding and that Chloe would never intentionally harm me. I heard him out, then calmly stated that his reaction at the venue, his disregard for my feelings, and his protection of Chloe was the main problem, not simply Chloe's behavior. I informed him I couldn't speak further and hung up. He attempted to call back multiple times, but I didn't pick up again. Over the next few days, several friends who had been asked to the wedding contacted me. Some gave steadfast support, voicing surprise at Chloe's conduct and Jacob's recounted reaction. Others were more reluctant, having plainly heard Chloe's version of events, that I was unstable or had just fled without good cause. Chloe has seemingly been quite active on social media and in group chats, presenting herself as the confused friend and me as the unreasonable person who spoiled everyone's day. A few of my close friends who also knew Chloe through me and Jacob confessed to me that they'd noticed indications of Chloe's controlling behavior toward Jacob for years. They recalled instances where Chloe had dominated his time or made indirectly hostile remarks about me, but they hadn't intervened strongly, either because they didn't want to disturb the harmony in our friend group or because they hadn't completely understood how much sway she held until now. Their confessions were difficult to listen to, yet also affirming. The venue has been informed about the cancellation. Predictably, most of the payments are non-refundable. The money issue is a less urgent worry at present, but will require attention. My focus has been on establishing space and coming to terms with the recent occurrences. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my original post, and about 3 weeks since the day of the non-wedding. The first surge of turmoil has lessened a bit, but the circumstance stays intricate and profoundly distressing. Thank you again for the ongoing messages and viewpoints. Many of you requested further explanation regarding why Jacob's actions were the breaking point, and I will attempt to explain further. I mentioned in my last update that walking away wasn't only due to Chloe's ill-intentioned message. It concerned Jacob's response, which marked the peak of a 7-year trend where my emotions and worries, especially about Chloe, were continually disregarded or downplayed. There were numerous minor occurrences. For example, Jacob divulged private aspects of our relationship to Chloe, including our disagreements, my individual vulnerabilities, and even specifics about our future plans that I thought were confidential. I only found this out by chance when Chloe mentioned something I had confided in Jacob in alone. When I challenged Jacob, he justified it by stating Chloe was his closest friend, and he discussed everything with her, perceiving no violation of my trust. On a minimum of 2 instances, Chloe by chance reserved holidays at the identical resort or close-by spots when Jacob and I were on anniversary journeys. Jacob maintained it was merely a humorous coincidence and that it would be impolite not to spend some moments with her, essentially transforming portions of our romantic escapes into group excursions. My protests were presented as me being envious or unsure. There were also my birthdays, where Jacob appeared more focused on Chloe's pleasure or involvement in the arrangements than my personal desires. One year he asked her to a small, private dinner I had expressly asked for with only him, stating Chloe would be annoyed if she was excluded. These occasions, and numerous similar ones, established a dynamic in which I frequently felt like a secondary figure to Jacob and Chloe's enduring friendship, instead of Jacob's main partner. His response on the wedding day wasn't a single error in judgment. It was in line with his consistent habit of placing Chloe's perceived requirements or his ease in sidestepping disagreements with her above my emotional welfare and the stability of our relationship. The wedding event was simply the most visible and harmful demonstration of this. My brother David and sister Emily have been remarkably supportive. They were and still are enraged on my behalf. After my initial explanation, they undertook to reach out to shared friends and some of our family members who had been at the venue or heard skewed accounts of what happened. They quietly and truthfully clarified what Chloe did, including providing screenshots of Chloe's group chat messages which some of my friends had sent to me. They also conveyed Jacob's response just as I described it. This has had a varied but mostly favorable outcome. Several guests who had initially showed bewilderment or had accepted Chloe's story contacted me or my parents to apologize. One of my aunts, who had initially called my mother rather distressed about the controversy, called back to apologize, saying she hadn't grasped the complete situation. However, many of Jacob's family members and some of his friends stayed firmly on his side, convinced I had overreacted immensely. Jacob continued attempting to contact me after that first call I received at my parents' home. He called numerous times a day, each day for the first week. I didn't pick up. He then began sending lengthy, disorganized emails. These emails presented a peculiar blend of apologies for how matters escalated, justifications for his conduct. I was simply in shock and didn't know what to utter. Blaming Chloe truly made a mistake. I'm so angry with her, and appeals for me to simply speak with him so we could resolve this. Roughly 10 days following the incident, he appeared without warning at my parents' home. My father encountered him at the entrance. I was on an upper floor but could overhear the conversation. My father was extremely firm. He informed Jacob that I did not wish to see him, that he had profoundly wounded me, and that he ought to depart and honor my appeal for space. Jacob seemingly attempted to dispute, to appeal to speak with me directly, but my father did not yield. Jacob ultimately departed, but not prior to reaffirming that he simply wished to rectify matters. He also endeavored to persuade my siblings to intervene or convince me to communicate with him, but they both declined and instructed him to honor my desires. The monetary repercussions are significant. The wedding altogether was allocated approximately $40,000, with contributions from both our families and our individual savings. As expected, most supplier agreements included provisions concerning cancellations, particularly being so near the date, signifying that the bulk of the funds disbursed is non-refundable. My parents had provided a considerable amount, as had I. Jacob's parents had also covered various elements. My parents have been exceptionally supportive and have offered to bear the costs from their contribution and assist me in covering some of what I personally lost. I have resolved that I will not be pursuing any compensation from Jacob or his family for my share of the expenses or for the deposits I covered with my own money. The prospect of entering into financial negotiations with him or his family is intolerable. I prefer to absorb the monetary loss and have a more definite separation. I have begun the process of attempting to sell my wedding dress through a consignment shop, though I don't expect to recover a significant portion of its worth. The rings are a separate issue. The engagement ring is in my possession, and I will probably send it back to Jacob through my father at some point, though I have not dealt with that as of yet. The psychological impact of this experience has been profound. Many friends, and indeed numerous comments on my initial post, recommended counseling. I have heeded this counsel earnestly. I dedicated time last week investigating counselors, locally who focus on relationship trauma, emotional abuse, and healing from major life disruptions. I have an introductory meeting scheduled for next week. I understand that coming to terms with this treachery and the preceding years will be a protracted process. Update 3. It's been roughly 2 months since my previous update, which means it's been slightly more than 2.5 months since the non-existent wedding day. Quite a bit has occurred, and I felt it was fitting to offer a concluding update, as many of you have tracked this narrative and provided significant backing. After several weeks at my parents' house, I decided to temporarily relocate with my dear friend. While my parents were exceptionally supportive, being in my childhood home, surrounded by numerous memories, and in a place where Jacob knew he could readily locate me or try to reach me through my family, grew increasingly stressful. Laura had an extra room and offered it to me without hesitation. Relocating there provided a greatly needed impartial environment, some measure of privacy, and an opportunity for some emotional separation from the direct core of the repercussions. Despite my explicit signals that I desired no communication, Jacob continued. Roughly 3 weeks ago, he succeeded in getting Laura's phone number through a shared contact, a person with whom I have since ended connection, as I had specifically requested them not to disclose my current residence or contact information. He called me on Laura's phone. She handed it to me, appearing worried. His tone was altered on this occasion. He called me on Laura's phone. She handed it to me, appearing worried. His tone was altered on this occasion. He stated he had reflected extensively, and that he at last grasped the full scope of Chloe's manipulation, and, crucially, his own shortcomings in our relationship and on the day of the wedding. He asserted he had a significant argument with Chloe, where he informed her he understood the harmfulness of her behavior and its effect on our bond. He declared he had severed all connections with her. As alleged evidence, he subsequently messaged Laura's phone, as I had blocked him on mine, a screenshot that seemed to display Chloe's contact, blocked on his phone in a short, furious text conversation. He begged for a chance to meet, to speak face to face, to demonstrate his earnestness about changing, and to see if there was any method to mend what was shattered. I heard Jacob's statements on that call with minimal interjection. Upon his completion, I informed him that while I recognized his seeming understanding and his choice concerning Chloe, it did not alter the past events. I clarified that Chloe no longer being involved, even if genuine and lasting, could not nullify his actions, his words, or the accumulated impact of the prior 7 years, where he steadily opted to disregard my emotions concerning her and other issues. I declared that the trust between us was permanently broken and that I was unable to foresee a future where it could be reinstated to its former state, or the necessary level for a sound marriage. I informed him I had no desire to meet. Subsequent to that phone conversation, and after conversing about it with Laura and my therapist, I had commenced therapy shortly after my last update. I resolved to dispatch Jacob an official message. I wrote an email with a copy sent to my father for his records, though he was not directly involved in its sending. In the email, I repeated what I had told him on the phone, that our relationship was over, and his ongoing attempts to contact me were causing significant distress and hindering my ability to move forward. I clearly requested that he stop all forms of communication with me, my family, and my close friends. I stated that any further unwanted contact would be documented and could be perceived as harassment. A few days after I sent the email, Jacob's aunt, his mother's sister, called my mother. She apparently tried to plead Jacob's case, saying he was heartbroken, remorseful, and that I should find it in my heart to forgive him, especially now that he had ended things with Chloe. My mother listened politely for a short while and then told her that this was a matter for me and Jacob to handle, or not handle, as the case may be, and that my decision was final. She then handed the phone to me as I was there at the time visiting. I took the phone and spoke to Jacob's aunt. I was polite but very firm. I told her that I valued her concern for her nephew, but the situation was deeply personal. My decision was final, and I was not willing to discuss it further with her or any other member of their family. I then ended the call. I want to thank everyone who has read my posts and offered their perspectives. It was surprisingly helpful to explain the situation and receive feedback from a neutral audience. This will be my last update on this matter. I am currently concentrating on my therapy sessions, which are proving to be challenging but also very necessary. My living situation with Laura is stable and provides a calm environment. I don't know what the future holds, and there are still practical matters to settle, like the final disposition of the engagement ring, which my father will be returning to Jacob's family on my behalf next week. However, I know with certainty that my future will not include Jacob. Now this next one will really shock you. Hi everyone, I'm Ben, 35, male. Sharing this is tough, but I feel I must put it down somewhere to clear it from my mind. Everything began about 8 months prior, on a day that totally changed my life. I came home from a business trip a day early. I'd completed my tasks earlier than anticipated and planned to surprise my wife, Laura, 33, female. The surprise, sadly, was completely mine, and not a pleasant one. Our house felt silent as I entered. I placed my bags in the hall and moved towards our study. Laura often worked from home on Fridays. I noticed her work laptop open on the desk, something out of the ordinary. She was normally quite protective of her work devices, mentioning client confidentiality. As I drew nearer, a message notification pinged on the screen. The name Daniel showed up with a preview. Last night was incredible. Can't believe we finally did it. Same place next week. Daniel, 28, male, was a junior team member Laura supervised. My blood turned to ice. It felt as if the ground gave way beneath me. Against my good sense, a part of me that had to know, I clicked the message history. It was a Pandora's box of betrayal. Many, many months of messages. It began appearing innocent, or so one might claim, with remarks about work projects, then shifted to flirty office talk, compliments that were excessively personal. From there, it quickly intensified to explicit descriptions of their meetups, thorough talks of hotel rooms, specific times, even grumbles about close calls where they almost got caught. There were hotel booking confirmations, and then the photos. Private photos of Laura and Daniel. Photos of them in various states of undress, in hotel rooms, even a few selfies that looked like they were taken in our car, the one I usually drove. I felt physically sick. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone as I took pictures of the screen, documenting everything. She may have simply left the laptop open in her haste and arrogance, maybe thinking that I wasn't due back until the next day. Laura and I had been together for 5 years, married for 2. I truly believed we had a decent, though not flawless, relationship. We had arguments, yes. What couple doesn't? Sometimes Laura had a quick temper or might be exacting. For instance, if we were at a restaurant and her order was slightly wrong, she would make a major fuss, not just a mere complaint. I used to think it was her being a precise person or having strict standards. Looking back, these were warning signs of her self-importance I had opted to overlook or minimize. I never, not once, suspected unfaithfulness. I admired her drive, her infrequent tantrums I put up with, thinking it was part of her ardent disposition. I sat there for what seemed like an age, the images and words searing into my mind. Then I heard her car pull into the driveway. She walked in a few minutes later, humming, then paused when she noticed me. "Ben, you're back early," she said. Her voice sounded too bright, and her eyes appeared. Surprised, but also something else. I didn't mince words. "Who is Daniel from marketing, Laura?" Her smile wavered. "He's just someone from work, a junior on my team." "Why do you ask?" She attempted to sound casual, but avoided my gaze and kept looking around. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked, looking straight at her. Laura let out a sharp laugh. "Don't be ridiculous, Ben." "Seriously? You're going to accuse me of that just because I work with him? You're being incredibly insecure." She began to walk past me. I raised my phone with a picture of her and Daniel in a hotel bed, smiling for the camera. Her face turned pale, then red. "You went through my private work laptop. That's a complete violation of my privacy." "How dare you?" she shrieked. "You're having an affair, setting up secret meetings, sending him photos, and your primary concern is your laptop's privacy?" I retorted, my own voice growing louder. She didn't deny it then. No point. She simply grew furious. "So what if I did? What are you going to do about it, Ben?" She spat. "Maybe if you weren't so damn boring and predictable. Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of your stupid hobbies, I wouldn't have to look for excitement elsewhere." Her words pierced. She began pacing the study, growing louder with each accusation. I was controlling, neglectful, didn't value her, tried to impede her career. A full onslaught of accusations. Then she noticed a porcelain vase on a shelf, a gift from my late aunt that I cherished. Before I could react, she seized it and hurled it against the wall. "This is your fault," she shrieked as it broke into pieces. "Everything is always your fault." I gazed at the broken vase, then at her. Something inside me snapped. "Get out," I stated, my voice low and enraged. "Get out of my house." The house we lived in was mine. I inherited it from my Aunt Carol, filled with her belongings. Laura knew how much it signified to me. "You can't force me out," she shouted, her face contorting. "I live here too. This is my home." "Not anymore," I declared. "Pack a bag. I want you gone this evening." She refused. The dispute continued for what seemed like hours. Her mood was erratic. 1 minute screaming and insulting me, the next sobbing that Daniel was a blunder, a nobody, then back to blaming me. At one moment, while screaming, she grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from the desk. She lifted it, as if she intended to hurl it at me or my computer. I recoiled and put my hands up. She held it there for a moment, then slammed it onto the desk hard, right beside her laptop. Then she seized a letter opener and made a few swift, shallow scratches on her forearm, drawing blood. "Look what you're making me do," she cried out, extending her arm. "You're driving me insane." The cuts were not deep, more for display, but watching her harm herself and accuse me was truly unsettling. I didn't know how to respond. I could not physically make her leave. I would not. Feeling exhausted, angry, and frankly a bit afraid of what she might do next, I informed her I'd be staying at my friend Sam's home for the evening. I needed room to think, to process, and for matters to calm down. I told her that upon my return the following day, I anticipated her having a plan to relocate, or to have already departed. That was an enormous error. Departing that night, abandoning her in my house, was the poorest choice I could have made. I passed a restless night on Sam's sofa. Sam listened, provided encouragement, and concurred Laura's behavior was beyond the pale. The following afternoon, at approximately 3 p.m., I drove back to the house, with Sam joining me for moral support and as a witness. My key slipped into the lock, but it would not turn. I attempted once more. No response. She had altered the locks. I could not believe the nerve. I pounded on the door, yelling her name. After a few lengthy minutes, Laura opened the door, just a slit, with a chain still engaged. She wore a smug, nearly triumphant expression. "Can I help you?" she inquired. "Let me in, Laura. This is my house. You know that?" "Not according to my lawyer," she stated coolly, presenting a piece of paper through the slit. I could discern some type of legal letterhead. "I filed for an emergency order of protection and established residency. You left, Ben. You abandoned the marital home. I'm staying, and you can't come near me." I was utterly astonished. In under 24 hours, she had not only altered the locks, but had already spoken with a lawyer and was actively attempting to seize my property and portray me as a danger. Sam attempted to reason with her, remarking that this was absurd, but she merely smirked and shut the door forcefully. Several minutes later, as Sam and I stood on the pavement, debating our next steps, a police vehicle arrived. Laura had called them. She had informed them I was attempting to break in, that I had previously threatened her, which was an outright falsehood, and that she was concerned for her safety. The two officers heard my account, then hers, which was shouted through the closed door. They were polite, but clarified that, as she was legally my wife, had established residency, no matter how manipulatively, and had claimed to fear me, they could not compel her to depart, nor could they grant me entry if she opposed it. Pushing the matter, they cautioned, could result in my arrest for domestic disturbance or attempted forced entry. One officer actually said, "Sir, for your own good, it's better if you leave the premises. Get a lawyer. Handle this through the courts." I was being led away from my own property, under suspicion, while the woman who had been unfaithful to me ruined my possessions and was now fabricating false accusations, observed from the window. My immediate action was to contact a lawyer specializing in divorces. I described the circumstances. My attorney was direct. He stated it would be a difficult, messy battle, particularly considering Laura's swift aggression and deceptive strategies. He cautioned that she would attempt to claim as much as she could, and demonstrating the house was solely separate property, despite its status as an inheritance, would necessitate documentation. He also mentioned her allegations of abuse, even if untrue, would complicate things. So that is my current position. I am still conversing with the attorney and am unsure what to do. I am so bewildered. Reddit, what would you do in my situation? Update 1. Hello again, everyone. The flood of messages and encouragement following my initial post was unforeseen and truly beneficial. It's an odd solace to realize I'm not completely alone in navigating this sort of personal torment. Many of you shared comparable experiences or provided counsel, which I've considered deeply. I conversed extensively with my elder sister, Clara. She's a corporate attorney, so not precisely her area, but she's exceptionally astute and fiercely protective. She has known Laura since I began dating her and confessed she had always considered Laura somewhat demanding and egocentric, but she never envisioned this degree of malice. Clara remembered a dinner gathering at my home around a year ago, where Laura had scolded a guest for inadvertently spilling a small amount of wine on a fresh rug, rendering the ambiance exceedingly tense for all present. At that moment, Clara had drawn me aside and remarked Laura needed to lessen her intensity, but I defended Laura, stating she was merely stressed from her job. Clara now expresses she regrets not having been more assertive at that time. Clara has been an unwavering support. She promptly volunteered to screen any attorney I selected and to examine all papers and legal approaches. Her legal intellect, even beyond family law, has proven priceless. Then, she informed me, Laura is employing a typical destructive personality strategy. The abrupt fury, the role of the victim, the swift progression to legal menaces, altering locks, the untrue allegations to the police, the self-harm warning. These are all maneuvers. They are crafted to unsettle you, cause you to question yourself, and grasp command of the story and possessions. Do not permit her to prevail by responding emotionally. Adhere to facts. Record all details, and allow the legal procedure to unfold. Listening to her present it so clinically aided me in detaching somewhat and viewing Laura's actions not as arbitrary outbursts, but as intentional, manipulative maneuvers. The pressure from other sources, especially Laura's family, has been unyielding and completely enraging. Laura's parents, Eleanor and George, telephoned me repeatedly. Their method was astonishing. Eleanor, Laura's mother, handled the majority of the conversation. She started lecturing about how all marriages encounter difficulties and that I, as the man, ought to be more understanding and forgiving of Laura's passionate and sometimes impulsive nature. She even tried to imply that Daniel, the affair partner, was probably just captivated by Laura, and that Laura, in her senior position, might have been guiding him a bit too closely, perhaps blurring a line unintentionally. The way she tried to cleanse and downplay a months-long, deeply deceptive affair was astonishing. Eleanor then dared to say, "Ben, darling, Laura is quite a sensitive girl. You leaving like that, even for a night, must have frightened her greatly. It drove her to the brink. She needs stability, and you know how much she cherishes that house. It's her haven as well. You should truly think about letting her remain there while you two sort things out. Forgive and forget. It's the Christian thing to do, isn't it?" When I interrupted and informed her about Laura shattering my aunt's irreplaceable vase, and then lightly cutting her arm while blaming me, Eleanor just let out a dramatic sigh. Oh, she's always been somewhat theatrical. She inherits that from her dear father's side, you know. A flair for the dramatic. Don't take it so seriously. She was probably just distraught and intended no harm by it. Those things are replaceable. But a marriage is invaluable. George, Laura's father, who is usually quiet and allows Eleanor to take charge, murmured his assent. He added that Laura was extremely delicate at the moment, and that I needed to be the more mature man and display compassion. Their sole concern was for Laura's comfort, her wishes, and upholding her version of reality. It was perfectly evident where Laura had developed her sense of entitlement and her conviction that she was never responsible for her actions. They even implied that if I caused difficulties, it could become disagreeable for everyone, which I interpreted as a subtle threat, possibly financial or legal, considering their past conduct of rescuing Laura. Laura herself has been a torrent of disordered communication since receiving divorce papers and the formal notice to vacate, which her lawyer is naturally contesting. Since I blocked her primary phone number, she's been utilizing burner apps and new SIM cards to call and text me. The voicemails she leaves are an unsettling mix. They shift erratically from tearful, almost pitiful apologies, where she sobs about making a terrible, terrible error and how Daniel meant nothing, to assertions of undying love and how we were soulmates destined to overcome this. Then frequently in the very next message, or even within the same one, her tone will change to cold fury. She'll yell obscenities, threaten to destroy my career, tell me I'll never acquire the house, that she'll battle me with every breath, and that she'll ensure everyone knows what an abusive monster I am. Her harassment went beyond phone calls. She appeared at Sam's apartment building one evening, long after 10 p.m. Sam resides in a secure building, but she somehow managed to follow another resident through the main entrance. She then began pounding on Sam's apartment door, yelling my name, insisting I come out and confront her like a man. Sam, who is a good friend yet not confrontational, was rather startled. He telephoned me as I was outdoors, and I instructed him to contact building security at once. Security led a hysterical and yelling Laura off the property. Sam mentioned she seemed entirely deranged. She was yelling that I was keeping her emotional support documents captive inside Sam's apartment. The defamation campaign has grown more intense. Sarah, a shared acquaintance, more hers than mine, telephoned me, seemingly to offer compassion, but it soon became obvious she was seeking information for Laura. Sarah conveyed that Laura has been informing everyone that I was secretly dating someone else for months, that I was cruel and emotionally distant, and that her brief lapse with Daniel was a desperate plea for help because I was so neglectful and abusive. She's portraying herself as the tragic casualty of a cold, unfeeling husband. This story is gaining acceptance with individuals who don't know me well or who are readily influenced by her dramatic displays. The most troubling event took place last week, directly concerning the house. I needed to collect crucial personal documents, my work laptop, and some important medicine. My lawyer arranged for a court-approved civil standby, meaning 2 police officers needed to be present to ensure calm during my short visit. Laura was naturally there. The instant she saw me enter behind the officers, she began a complete meltdown. She clutched her stomach dramatically, staggered, and then fell onto the living room floor, crying loudly. She began screaming that she was expecting my child and that the stress I was causing her was leading her to have a miscarriage right at that moment. I was completely astonished. We hadn't been intimate for many months, long before I found out about the affair. There was no chance she was pregnant by me. The police officers appeared highly uncomfortable, uncertain how to manage the situation. One of them, a younger female officer, carefully inquired if Laura required an ambulance or medical care. Abruptly, Laura's agonizing pain appeared to lessen somewhat. She made a display of bravely attempting to sit up, waved a faint hand, and stated she'd be all right. But then she gave me a malicious stare and said, clearly audible to the officers, "He doesn't care about our baby. He likely wishes this to occur." It was an outrageous falsehood, plainly intended to shock, manipulate, and undermine my standing in front of the police. After I collected my necessary belongings, as I was leaving the premises, she whispered, her voice soft and threatening, "You'll pay for this, Ben. I'll make sure you lose everything, you bastard." Both police officers heard her threat and recorded it in their report, which my lawyer said was useful. Clara's advice continues to be consistent. Stay completely detached from Laura directly. All communication must go through lawyers. Document each and every interaction, every threat, every voicemail, every report from others of her behavior. This growing pattern of harassment, defamation, and obvious manipulation in front of law enforcement will be vital in court, she said. It shows her instability and her disregard for due process. It's an extremely tough path. Every day feels like navigating a psychological war zone, never knowing what fresh kind of attack Laura will unleash. The woman I married is not merely gone. She's been replaced by a spiteful, unpredictable stranger who appears set on destroying me. Update 2. Hi all. I've had some requests for further particular information on how Laura succeeded in carrying on her affair with Daniel for so long, and a closer look at her family background and past behaviors, which, looking back, were major warning signs. Putting this all together has been like constructing a truly unpleasant mosaic. Concerning how the affair operated, Laura was more daring and careless than I had ever conceived, probably driven by her arrogance and her conviction that she was beyond reproach. Daniel, who worked under her, was seemingly quite smitten and also rather innocent, based on the comprehensive message log on her laptop, and later confirmed by a very hesitant former colleague of Laura's, who ultimately contacted my lawyer with details. Burdened by guilt for remaining quiet, Laura exploited her position of power over Daniel quite straightforwardly. She started most of their forbidden encounters, frequently presenting them as after-work strategy meetings or casual team bonding. Daniel was fairly new to the firm in the area, rendering him more vulnerable to her sway. Her former colleagues stated that Laura would assign Daniel to tasks that demanded them working late collaboratively, then propose they get a swift drink to relax, which would subsequently progress to more. Their secret rendezvous occurred with surprising regularity, at least twice weekly for a number of months. They preferred a specific mid-range hotel chain, selecting places close to their office, yet at times going farther afield. Laura, as it happened, had opened a distinct credit card account under her own name, sent to her office, which she solely used for the hotel accommodations and presents for Daniel. I had no knowledge whatsoever of this account. Her excuses to me for her absences were numerous. Late nights at the office due to urgent deadlines, required networking gatherings, team dinners I wasn't invited to because they were solely work colleagues. The colleague recalled that Daniel, in his deep admiration or perhaps his own arrogance, would sometimes make subtle boasts to other junior staff about his unique bond with an upper-level manager. Some people in the office evidently suspected something improper was happening, but Laura had a reputation for an explosive temper and for harboring resentment, so no one ventured to challenge her or report it. Her audacity extended to company resources. She took Daniel on what she asserted was a vital client outreach journey to a close-by city for a weekend. In actual fact, it was an intimate escape. She charged a considerable part of it, meals, a rental car, stating hers was being repaired, and even some client hospitality, which was in fact tickets to a concert for her and Daniel, straight to the company. This degree of carelessness eventually contributed to her termination from her employment. After I initiated divorce proceedings and reports of the affair and her overall unpredictable conduct began to spread, partially because of her own public outbursts, and partially through the company rumor mill, her company commenced an internal inquiry. She was dismissed for severe wrongdoing and improper use of company money. Predictably, she held me fully responsible for undermining her career by disseminating malicious falsehoods. Turning now to Laura's family and her history. Her parents, Eleanor and George, are the creators of her sense of entitlement. Laura is their sole child, and from what I've witnessed, and what Clara has also pointed out over time, she was brought up in a setting where she was the focus of their world, seldom refused anything, and never genuinely made to answer for her detrimental conduct. If Laura had a fit as a youngster, or even as an adult, she typically achieved her goal. If she failed a test, it was the instructor's fault for not clarifying matters correctly. If she lost a match, the regulations were unjust, or the adversary defrauded. They are comfortably upper middle class, not exceptionally rich, but they hold sufficient assets and a particular social standing to resolve any major difficulties Laura faced. A clear instance of this, and which Eleanor once told me with an odd kind of pride, as an illustration of Laura's lively nature, occurred when Laura was in her initial year of university. She was apprehended in the act of plagiarizing a substantial term paper. The proof was undeniable, and she confronted expulsion. Rather than Laura dealing with the repercussions, Eleanor and George promptly retained a distinguished lawyer who specialized in academic conflicts. They threatened the university with a lengthy and harmful legal action, claiming everything from instructor partiality to procedural injustice. The university, probably aiming to avoid unfavorable publicity and expensive legal action, ultimately permitted Laura to withdraw from the course without academic repercussions, and the plagiarism accusation was discreetly removed from her record. This taught Laura a strong lesson. Rules are for other people, and if you or your parents cause enough fuss or threaten enough problems, you can get away with nearly anything. Throughout our marriage, even before the affair became known, our disagreements frequently followed a troubling pattern. Laura seldom engaged in reasonable discussion when she felt criticized or obstructed. Instead, she would turn to extreme emotional strategies. The silent treatment for days at a time was a frequent one. At times, she would accuse me of not loving her, of being cold or uncaring, and then threaten to leave me, packing a bag dramatically, only to let herself be persuaded to remain after hours of my begging and comfort. On several occasions, during especially intense arguments, often about small matters, like my wanting a calm weekend when she wished to go out, she would escalate to actions such as hyperventilating until she almost fainted, or gently but repeatedly hitting her head against a wall or door frame, exclaiming that I was driving her mad or making her sick. Back then, I was truly concerned about her. I would give in immediately, apologize even when I believed I'd done nothing wrong, and direct all my effort to calming her. Now I view these incidents with chilling clarity. They weren't signs of true distress, but calculated manipulative acts, early warnings of the deeply unstable and explosive conduct I am dealing with now. Her sense of ownership is complete, extending not only to material possessions but also to people. In her mind, I was not her partner, but her property. The house, despite its distinct legal standing as my inheritance, became her house the instant she moved in. The affair, I now think, wasn't just about a brief quest for excitement. It was about power and control. Power over Daniel, her subordinate, whom she could command and manipulate, and power over me by keeping up this elaborate secret life, by misleading me so completely. The notion that I would dare to question her authority, uncover her dishonesty, or try to remove her from her house is an unacceptable insult to her whole perspective. Her family's steadfast, unquestioning backing, even after learning the complete scope of her affair and her later deeds, only helps to strengthen her firmly held conviction that she is the wrong person, and that I am the one behaving irrationally and unkindly. They always confirm her story, telling her that I am the problem, that I am spiteful, and that she must struggle fiercely for what genuinely belongs to her. This harmful echo chamber makes any reasonable discussion or friendly settlement completely out of the question. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's been an exceptionally long and exhausting period since my last update. Almost an entire year filled with legal disputes, emotional distress, and ongoing pressure. But I can at last announce that this chapter is largely concluded. The court proceedings were just as contentious and unpleasant as my lawyer had predicted. Laura and her legal team adopted a tactic of fierce offense, trying to portray me as a vindictive, controlling, and even abusive husband. Laura herself took the stand and, under her lawyer's skilled direction, gave a tearful, Oscar-worthy performance. She stated that I was emotionally remote and financially restrictive, even though bank records showed she had her own considerable income and access to shared funds, which she spent extravagantly. She asserted that my discovery of her intimate friendship with Daniel was simply an excuse I created to attempt to remove her from the marital home because I covertly wished to sell it for a large profit and exclude her. She even asserted that she had put a considerable sum of her own premarital savings into the maintenance and enhancement of the house, a claim she could not provide believable evidence for, and which our forensic accountant readily disproved. My lawyer methodically broke down these falsehoods with bank statements, emails, and statements from people like Sam, who had observed Laura's spending patterns and how she treated me, and even my sister Clara, who spoke about Laura's usual conduct and previous examples of financial carelessness. Laura's ludicrous pregnancy claim, which she had dramatically announced during my police-escorted visit to retrieve my belongings, was quickly and humiliatingly exposed as untrue in the pretrial discovery phase. My lawyer had, with good reason, requested medical proof, doctor's visits, ultrasound reports, anything. Laura, naturally, could provide nothing. Her lawyer then weakly attempted to argue it was a pseudocyesis or hysterical pregnancy, caused by the immense stress I had allegedly inflicted upon her. The judge, A, was clearly not impressed by this explanation. This particular maneuver greatly weakened Laura's credibility from the outset. There were many examples of Laura's typical courtroom theatrics. During one session, as my lawyer was calmly presenting recorded proof of her excessive spending on Daniel, hotel bills from her secret credit card, receipts for expensive gifts, flight confirmations for their business trip, Laura abruptly stood up, shouting, "He's twisting everything. He's a liar. I'm the victim here, can't you see?" She truly attempted to approach the judge's bench before being sternly called to order by the bailiff and reprimanded by the judge. At another time, when Daniel was subpoenaed by my lawyer to testify, He seemed very unwilling and clearly anxious, but was legally obliged. Laura could not restrain herself. As Daniel, under oath, started to confirm the specifics of the affair, admitting Laura's initiation and active pursuit of it, and her later threats to him to keep his silence, Laura rose and shouted across the courtroom, calling him a pathetic, lying traitor and a spineless coward. This eruption led to her being formally cautioned by the judge that another such display would see her removed from the courtroom. The fight over my aunt's house was, as anticipated, the most bitter part of the proceedings. My aunt's will was perfectly clear, and the property deed plainly listed me as the sole inheritor prior to our marriage. Nevertheless, Laura's lawyer forcefully argued for a sizable portion of its current market value, citing marital asset claims based on the length of our marriage and her alleged non-financial contributions and sweat equity in maintaining and improving the property. We had to hire forensic accountants to carefully trace every penny related to the house, proving that all mortgage payments — the mortgage was very small and nearly paid off when I inherited it, and I paid off the remainder with premarital funds, property taxes, insurance, and any major upkeep or improvements — came directly from my premarital savings or my sole traceable income. Laura had contributed almost nothing financially to the house itself. A major turning point, I believe, came during the depositions of Laura's parents, Eleanor and George. While they both tried to firmly support Laura's story of victimhood and my alleged cruelty, my lawyer's exact and persistent questioning revealed many inconsistencies in their accounts and emphasized their long-term pattern of enabling Laura's behavior and protecting her from consequences. Eleanor grew more flustered, defensive, and even aggressive during cross-examination, at one point claiming my lawyer was bullying her. George mostly seemed uncomfortable and defeated, frequently deferring to Eleanor or stating he didn't recall specific incidents. Their combined testimony, meant to strengthen Laura's case, probably caused more harm than good by showing a clear picture of a dysfunctional family dynamic based on entitlement. After their depositions, there was a clear change in the demeanor of Laura's lawyer. He became a bit more subdued, maybe realizing the weakness of their overall position. Ultimately, a few weeks ago, after months of hearings, filings, and delays, many started by Laura's side, the judge delivered the final ruling. The divorce was approved on the basis of irreconcilable differences, with a specific determination of Laura's infidelity as a contributing factor to the marriage breakdown. Significantly, the house was confirmed as my only and separate property, with no equity or financial stake granted to Laura. This was a huge victory and a deep relief. In his summary, the judge highlighted Laura's blatant misconduct during the entire proceedings, including her false claims, her efforts to mislead the court, specifically mentioning the pregnancy claim, and her courtroom outbursts, noting these actions undermined her credibility. Laura was officially instructed to vacate the property within 30 days. The day Laura moved out was extremely strained. On my lawyer's recommendation, I organized for a civil standby, meaning 2 police officers attended to avoid any more problems. Laura was gloomy, emitting animosity. She didn't speak to me directly. She deliberately prolonged the process for the full designated period, proceeding with agonizing slowness. There was some small, obviously malicious damage found once she departed. Multiple deep, intentional gouges on the hardwood floor in the master bedroom, an odd and rough drawing in permanent marker on a section of wall concealed behind a bookshelf in the study, and a few small, sentimental items of mine were missing, of no great financial worth, but personally significant. It wasn't significant enough to justify additional legal steps, but it was her final, trivial mark on this damaging phase of my life. As the officers instructed her to depart, she didn't look at me, but she said to one of the officers, her voice distinctly audible, "He'll regret this. People like him always get what's coming to them in the end." The officer simply nodded curtly and ensured she departed the premises. The financial settlement was the only part that left a bitter taste, though it was far less than Laura had demanded, because she had been dismissed from her job, a direct result of her affair and related misconduct becoming known, and successfully argued that she currently had no means of support. The court ordered me to pay temporary spousal support. It's a modest amount, and for a strictly limited period. My lawyer explained that such awards are fairly standard in our jurisdiction to allow a non-earning or significantly lower-earning spouse a transitional period to secure employment and become self-sufficient, irrespective of their conduct during the marriage, unless it involved criminal financial fraud against the spouse. It stings to write those checks each month, knowing where the money is going after all she put me through, but it's a small price to pay for my freedom and peace of mind. I am methodically counting down the days until those payments cease. I've started the slow, arduous process of reclaiming my home, and more importantly, my life. The initial step was to hire a locksmith to install new, high-security locks on all the doors. The house feels strangely quiet now, but it's a tranquil quiet. The relationship didn't merely worsen, it disastrously collapsed, devoured by Laura's destructive choices and her complete unwillingness to accept responsibility for any of her actions. Thank you once again to everyone who has followed this story and offered words of support and encouragement. It has been one of the darkest and most trying times of my life, but I'm past it. That chapter is at last definitively closed. If you thought that was crazy, listen to this. Hello, Reddit. I'm not sure what to do. Or perhaps I've already done it. I need to know if I'm the asshole for what happened. My wife, let's call her Anna, and I got married 3 weeks ago. We dated for 2 years. The wedding was nice, not too big. Our families were there. Our friends were there. We paid for a lot of it ourselves. Anna truly wanted a special honeymoon. She showed me pictures of this place for months. It has blue water and white sand houses over the water. It cost a lot of money. I wanted to make her happy. So I booked it. 10 days. Her dream trip. We flew there 2 days ago. It was a long flight. We got to the hotel. It was like the pictures. Very pretty. Anna was so happy. She snapped many photos. She said, "This is perfect. Thank you." I was pleased because she was pleased. Yesterday was our first full day there. We had breakfast. We strolled on the beach. We went swimming. In the afternoon, I started to get a headache, probably from the long flight in the sun. I told Anna I needed to find some pain relief and obtain more bottled water. She was glancing at her phone, preparing to call her best friend to inform her about the spot. She said, "Okay, sure," without truly looking up from her screen. Our hut was one of those over-the-water varieties. It was rather large. The bedroom was in the rear part of the hut. The primary living area and the balcony were at the front, overlooking the ocean. I thought there might be some extra water bottles, or perhaps a small medical kit with some basic medicine near the minibar section, which was closer to the hut's entrance. If not, I assumed I'd need to contact the front desk. I moved from the main living area and headed towards the entrance part of the hut to search for the water and medicine. I located a few small bottles of water in a little fridge there, and luckily I recalled I had packed some headache pills in my carry-on bag, which I had placed by the door. So I swallowed a pill and finished a whole bottle of water. I felt somewhat better. When I returned to the main living area, planning to go to the bedroom to lie down, Anna was already speaking on her phone. She was on the balcony, facing away from the room, gazing at the ocean. She was speaking with Lisa. The door to the balcony was partially open, I guess to allow the sea breeze inside. She didn't hear my return to the main room. I usually walk quietly anyway. I was going to speak, simply to inform her I was back and going to the bedroom. But then I heard her voice's tone shift. It was not her usual casual voice. It seemed more excited than before. It sounded as if she was sharing a significant secret, and the initial words I distinctly heard caused me to halt in place. I made no sound. I heard her say, "Oh my God, Lisa, I can't wait. Everything is turning out perfectly." Lisa must have asked what she meant. Anna then uttered, "Noah." Seeing Noah, he said he can get away for a few days. My ears perked up. Noah is her high school boyfriend. I knew they were friends on social media, but I didn't think they talked much. Anna had told me a long time ago that he was married. She kept talking, her voice full of energy. "He's going to try and meet me in, but not on the island itself when we leave here. Or maybe I'll go to further away for a bit on the way back." I told him I could make it work. Then she giggled. A kind of sneaky giggle. "I've been talking to him for like 6 months now. Can you believe it? He's so unhappy with his wife. He said I'm the only one who understands him. 6 months? That means she was talking to him before our wedding, while we were planning our future. While I was working to pay for this honeymoon, she wanted so badly." I heard her say, "Yeah, my name, has no idea. He's so predictable. He'll just want to go straight home. I'll say I want to visit my cousin in city she mentioned as a possible Noah meeting spot for a few days before heading back. He won't care. He'll be fine with it." She told Lisa how Noah still made her feel things, how they had so much history, how he was her first love, and you never forget your first love. She said she deserved to be happy, and Noah made her feel a spark she hadn't felt in ages. She was gushing about him, about meeting him. It sounded like this plan to meet Noah was more important, more exciting to her than our actual honeymoon. I did not move. I just stood there in the living area, listening. My headache was completely gone, replaced by a cold feeling in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was our honeymoon, a place she said was her dream, and all along she was planning to meet another man. After she finished her call, she came back into the living room from the balcony. She was smiling, looking very pleased. She saw me and said, "Oh, you're back. Feeling any better?" I just looked at her. I didn't say anything for a moment. She asked, "Are you okay? You look pale." I said, "My headache is gone." She went to take a shower. While she was in the bathroom, with the water running, I thought very hard. I replayed her words in my head. 6 months. He has no idea. Deserved to be happy. The lies. The planning. When she came out of the shower, she was humming a little tune. She seemed very happy and relaxed. I stood up from the chair I had sunk into. I walked towards our suitcases in the bedroom area. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I am packing my things." She laughed, a confused sound. "Packing for what?" "We just got here." "Are you planning a surprise?" I said, "I am going home." Her face changed. The smile disappeared. "What are you talking about? Are you sick? Did something happen?" I said, "No, I'm not sick." I opened my suitcase and started putting my clothes into it. She started to look worried, a bit annoyed. "Hey, stop this. This isn't funny." "What's wrong with you?" I said. "I heard your call with Lisa." Her eyes got wide. She stopped moving. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she asked, "What did you hear?" I replied, "Everything." She began to deny it right away. No, you misunderstood. Noah is just an old friend. Lisa and I we were simply joking around. "Girl talk," I stated. "You mentioned he was unhappy with his wife. You claimed he made you feel a spark. You revealed I had no idea because I was predictable. You had a plan to lie to me." She began to grow angry then. Her face turned red. "You were listening in on my private conversation. That's a total violation of my privacy." "How dare you?" I countered. "You were intending to cheat on me on our honeymoon. You married me under false pretenses. This marriage is over." She began screaming then, really screaming, calling me names, saying I was crazy, saying I was insecure and controlling, saying I was ruining everything, her dream trip. I completed packing my bag. I confirmed I had my passport, my wallet, and my phone. She stood in front of the door to the hut, blocking my way. "You are not leaving me here." "You can't do this," I stated. "Watch me." I shifted her aside. She tried to grab my arm, her fingers digging in. I pulled my arm back. I walked out of the hut. I proceeded directly to the resort's front desk. I informed the person there that I needed to check out. They appeared quite surprised. They asked if there was a problem. I replied, yes, a significant one. I paid for the one night we had stayed. I had paid for the entire 10-day stay beforehand, using my credit card. I knew I would likely not get any of that money back. At that moment, I was unconcerned about the money. I asked them to organize a boat to take me to the main island, where the airport was located. While I was waiting for the boat to arrive, I did two distinct things. One, I called the airline. I explained I needed to change my flight to return home at once. I secured a flight that was leaving that same night. Her return ticket was booked as part of my booking, with my frequent flyer, miles, and my credit card for the taxes. I canceled her return ticket. It was a ticket I had arranged and paid for. 2. I called her parents. Her mother answered the phone. I told her quite calmly and plainly what had happened. I said, Anna and I are on our honeymoon. I recently discovered that she's been planning to meet her married high school sweetheart, Noah. She has been in contact with him for the past 6 months. She had a specific plan to meet him after this trip, or possibly even extend her trip to see him by lying to me. I overheard her entire conversation with Lisa outlining these plans. I am leaving her at the resort now. I have canceled her return ticket that I provided. Our marriage is over. Her mom was silent for an extended period. I could hear her breathing. Then she started to cry. She said, No, that can't be true. There must be some mistake. Anna wouldn't do that, I said. I heard it myself. There is no mistake. I am on my way to the airport now. You will need to contact Anna and help her determine how she will return home. Then I ended the call. I boarded the boat. I proceeded to the airport. I awaited my flight. I boarded my flight. I am now back in my home city. It's the middle of the night here. My phone hasn't ceased ringing since I landed and activated it. It's Anna. It's her mother, her father, her sister, Lisa, her closest friend. I haven't responded to any of their calls. Anna has sent me numerous texts. Initially, they expressed confusion. Where did you disappear to? The hotel staff mentioned you checked out. What's happening? Then they became extremely angry. How could you abandon me here alone in a foreign country? Are you mad? You canceled my ticket? I'm stranded? How could you do that to me? You contacted my parents? You utter bastard. You told them falsehoods. Subsequently, the text turned into mere strings of screaming in capital letters, many expletives, many threats, stating I had ruined her life, ruined her reputation. I'm sitting in my home. It's quite silent here. I mostly feel numb, but I need to know. Am I the asshole for leaving her there, for canceling her ticket, and for telling her parents precisely why I did it? I feel like she betrayed me in the worst possible way. She was clearly going to cheat on me. She lied to me for months. Our wedding, this honeymoon, it feels like it was all based on a lie. So, Reddit, am I the asshole? Update 1. Okay, it has been 4 days since my initial post. Thank you for the comments. Most of you stated NTA. Some suggested I should have confronted her in another manner, or not informed her parents. But I stand by my actions. I am still at home. The jet lag is severe, but not as bad as the circumstances. My phone kept ringing incessantly for the initial 48 hours. It has quieted down somewhat now, but not entirely. Anna's initial messages after I departed were frantic and angry, as I mentioned. Many capital letters and exclamation points. You can't simply abandon me here. I possess no money. How am I meant to get home? She had a credit card, but I assume it has a low limit. We shared a joint account for wedding gifts that contained some money, but she never obtained a card for it. I did. I haven't accessed that account yet. My parents are going crazy, thanks to you. You are a monster. I hate you. Then the voicemails began. Some featured her crying, sobbing, stating I misunderstood everything, claiming she was merely fantasizing and would never have actually met Noah, affirming she loves me. Other voicemails contained her screaming, so loud I needed to hold the phone away from my ear, calling me every name imaginable, stating I am controlling and abusive for abandoning her, claiming I humiliated her. One voicemail stated, "Noah means nothing to me. You've ruined my reputation with my family for no reason." She demanded I reinstate her ticket, demanded I send her money. She demanded I call her parents and tell them I made it all up. I didn't respond to any of her messages or pick up any of her calls. What is there to say? I heard what I heard. Her parents, her mom, called me maybe 20 times the first day. Her dad called about 10 times. I picked up one call from her dad on the second day. He sounded tired. He said, "Son, what is all this?" "Anna is hysterical. She said you abandoned her over a misunderstanding." I told him, "I told your wife what I heard. Anna was on a call with Lisa. She was planning to meet Noah. She said she'd been talking to him for 6 months. She said he was married. She had a plan to lie to me, to go see him after the honeymoon. I'm not mistaken." He sighed. He said, "Noah, her old boyfriend, I thought that was long over." I said, "Apparently not." He asked me if I was sure. I said I was 100% sure. I told him a few more exact quotes I remembered from her call. Things like her saying Noah made her feel a spark and that she deserved to be happy. He was quiet for a bit. Then he said, "Canceling her ticket and leaving her there, that was harsh." I said, "Finding out your wife of 3 weeks is planning to open her legs to another man on your honeymoon is harsh. Finding out she's been talking to him for the 6 months leading up to our wedding is harsh." He didn't have much to say to that. He said they were trying to figure out how to get her a flight home. He sounded embarrassed. He didn't yell at me. He just sounded sad. Her mom sent me some angry texts. "You should have spoken to us first. And you have shamed our family. And Anna would never do such a thing. She is a good girl." I didn't reply to those. Lisa, her BFF Lisa, sent me a few messages on social media. "You need to call Anna. You guys need to talk this out. Then she made a mistake, okay? But leaving her like that? Seriously messed up." And finally, "You're an ass. She's heartbroken. I hope you're happy." I blocked Lisa. If she knew about this plan, she's not my friend. And Anna's tone on the call made it sound like Lisa knew everything. My actions since I got back. 1. I spoke with a lawyer. First thing Monday morning. He said I had grounds for an annulment or a divorce based on fraud. He asked if I wanted to try and reconcile. I said no, absolutely not. He started preparing the paperwork. 2. I changed the locks on my house. Anna has a key, or had a key. She never officially moved in all of her things. She still had her old apartment, but was supposed to give it up next month. We were going to move her things properly after the honeymoon. Now she won't be moving in here. 3. I went to our bank. I have a separate account. And we had that small joint account for wedding gift money. There was about $3,000 in it. I moved half of it, $1,500, into my separate account. I left her half there. I documented this. I also closed a joint credit card we got for honeymoon expenses that we had barely used. My lawyer said this was fine. 4. I started collecting any evidence. I don't have a recording of the call, obviously, but I wrote down everything I heard right afterward. My lawyer said my testimony might work. According to a brief call I took from her sister, who was more sensible and just wanted to know Anna was physically safe before her parents made all the arrangements. Anna remains at the resort. Her parents had to book her another flight. It's reportedly very costly to get a last-minute flight from that remote location. She's expected to fly back tomorrow or the day after. Her sister said Anna is a mess. Crying, not eating, then screaming. She also said Anna keeps claiming I misunderstood and that I'm ruining our lives over nothing. No indication of her accepting responsibility. I haven't heard anything about Noah or his wife. I haven't contacted Noah or his wife. I thought about it. I considered sending an untraceable message to his wife, but my lawyer said to wait and see, and not to do anything that could make me appear vindictive if this divorce turns contentious. He said the main goal is to end the marriage cleanly. For now, I've adhered to that advice. The information about Noah is primarily for my justification for ending the marriage. I still largely feel numb. Sometimes I feel angry. Sometimes I feel a little foolish for not noticing anything. But there were no indications. She seemed happy, excited for the wedding, for our life, or so I thought. My phone is quieter now. I blocked Anna's number after getting a few too many screaming voicemails. Her parents have my number, and so does her sister. I'll speak with them about the logistics for Anna's belongings, but that's all. I'm just waiting for the divorce papers to be prepared for service. I don't believe I'm the jerk. I think I reacted to a massive betrayal. Thanks for listening, Reddit. I'll update again if there are significant developments. Update 2, hello again. It's been a couple of weeks since my last update. A lot has occurred. Anna is back in the country. The divorce papers were served, and we had a confrontation. A lot has happened. Anna is back in the country. The divorce papers were served, and we had a confrontation. It wasn't good. Anna returned about 5 days after my last update. Her parents paid for her new flight. I heard from her sister that the trip was challenging. Multiple stops. Long layovers. Her sister said Anna arrived exhausted and highly emotional. Her parents picked her up from the airport. For a few days, things were quiet. I suppose she was recovering at her parents' house. My lawyer sent the divorce papers to her parents' address via a process server. He advised this was the optimal way to ensure she formally received them. She was served 3 days ago, but yesterday morning, my doorbell rang, repeatedly. I looked through the peephole. It was Anna, and her mother. I wasn't surprised. I opened the door. Before I could speak, Anna began shouting, "You! How could you do this to me? How could you ruin our marriage? How could you humiliate me like this?" Her voice was trembling. She tried to push past me into the house. I blocked the entrance. I said, "Anna, there is nothing to discuss. You were served the papers. Our marriage is over." Her mother said, "Can we please just come in and talk about this calmly?" "This is not how things should be handled," I said. "No. There will be no calm discussion about her plans to betray me. I am not interested in talking. I am only interested in finalizing the divorce." Anna started to cry then. "I didn't do anything. You twisted everything. Noah is just a friend. I was just excited to see an old friend." "You are so jealous and insecure," I said. "You told Lisa you had been speaking with him for 6 months. You said he was unhappy with his wife. You said he gave you a spark. You had a plan to lie to me to go see him. Those are not the actions of just a friend." She screamed, "You're a liar. You're making things up to make me look bad." Then she lunged at me. She tried to slap my face. I stepped back, and she stumbled past me into my hallway. Her mother gasped. I said firmly, "Anna, if you touch me, I will call the police." She turned around. "You ruined my hallway." Her mother gasped. I said firmly, "Anna, if you touch me, I will call the police." She turned around. "You ruined my life, my dream honeymoon, my reputation. My parents are ashamed of me because of your lies." Her mother intervened then. "Anna, calm down. Let's not make this worse." She tried to put her arm around Anna, but Anna pushed her away. "No, he needs to hear this. He is a cruel, evil man," Anna shouted. She then picked up a small vase from a hallway table and threw it on the floor. It shattered. "That's it," I stated. I took out my phone. "I am calling the police." As soon as I mentioned police, Anna's demeanor shifted slightly. Her fight diminished a little, replaced by a sort of underlying panic. Her mother said, "No, please don't. We will leave." "Anna, we are leaving now." She grabbed Anna's arm. Anna was still muttering things like, "He'll pay for this," and I did nothing wrong. Her mother pulled her out the door. Before she left, her mother looked at me and said, "She is very upset. She is not herself. This whole thing, it's a terrible shock." I just looked at her. I said she made her choices. They departed. I closed the door. I took a deep breath. My hands were trembling slightly from the adrenaline. I did not call the police then as they departed, but I took pictures of the shattered vase. I wrote down precisely what occurred, when it happened, and what was said. My lawyer advised me to document everything. About an hour later, Anna's father called me. He apologized for Anna's behavior and for the broken vase. He said Anna was extremely distraught and not thinking clearly. He said they were trying to get her help. He also mentioned Anna won't sign the divorce papers. She claims she'll fight it. She claims I have no grounds. I told him, I do have grounds. Your daughter committed fraud by marrying me while having an emotional affair and planning a physical one. He sighed heavily. He didn't argue with me. He just said, this is a mess, a terrible mess. Regarding Noah and his wife, here's a small update on that front. My lawyer had initially advised against contacting Noah's wife. However, after Anna was served, and it became clear she intended to fight the divorce and deny everything, my lawyer said it might be strategically useful if Noah's wife knew, as Anna's affair partner could be, deposed if needed, and his wife's knowledge might corroborate the situation if Noah confessed to her. He said sending an anonymous letter with the basic facts, Anna's name, Noah's name, the 6-month communication, the plan to meet, to Noah's wife would not be illegal, though it could be seen as aggressive. I considered it. Anna's complete lack of remorse and her attack on me pushed me over the edge. I wanted the truth revealed. So I did it. I typed a short, anonymous letter. I included some of the specific phrases Anna used about Noah that I overheard. Ones that only someone who heard the call or was told by Anna or Noah would know. I mailed it to Noah's wife. I found her address through some public record searches. It was easy to find. I don't know what will happen with that. Only a few days have passed since I sent it. I don't expect to hear anything directly. However, if it ruins Anna's plans with Noah permanently, then that is a result of her actions. My lawyer mentioned this could also backfire if Anna employs it to portray me as vengeful. I accepted that risk. My main concern is the divorce, and if Noah confirms the affair to his wife, and she then informs someone, or it emerges in their own potential divorce, it could assist my case if Anna keeps lying. I'm trying to return to normal. Work, see my friends. The few I've informed are very supportive. I'm not sleeping well. Each time the phone rings, I anticipate more drama. My lawyer stated her refusal to sign the papers simply means it will take longer. It will eventually proceed to a default judgment if she doesn't respond, or we will need to go to court if she disputes it with a lawyer. He advised me to prepare for her to attempt to make things difficult. Considering her behavior yesterday, I believe him. She isn't the person I believed I married, not even close. The entitlement is astonishing. The absence of any apology, any self-reflection is simply remarkable to me. She genuinely appears to believe she is the victim here, that I ruined her life by uncovering her betrayal. So that's the current situation. It's not improving. It's becoming uglier. I will update again when there are further developments. This is harder than I thought it would be. Update 3. It's been almost 2 months since the showdown at my place, and roughly 3 months since D-Day on the honeymoon. If I believed things were bad, then I was naive. This divorce proceeding is a particular type of hell, and Anna is ensuring that. Anna didn't just decline to sign the documents. She retained a lawyer, a real shark from what I hear. They are disputing the divorce, alleging my reasons are fabricated and malicious. They are refuting any affair or intention for an affair. Her lawyer sent a counterproposal that made my jaw drop. Anna is insisting on 1. Substantial spousal support for a marriage that endured 3 weeks before I discovered her betrayal. Her justification? Emotional distress and public embarrassment brought on by my abandonment of her during the honeymoon, and defamatory claims to her parents. She also asserts she left a part-time job she held prior to the wedding, expecting to be a married woman, and now her earning potential has been impaired. The job was 10 hours a week. 2. Half of all possessions. This covers half the worth of my residence, which I possessed for 5 years before we even encountered, half of my savings, largely premarital again, and half of the wedding presents, even those from my family. She is also asserting the 1,500 I removed from the shared gift account constituted theft. 3. reimbursement for her spoiled honeymoon and the expense of her urgent flight back. 4. Payment for her legal fees, a formal apology from me for ruining her reputation. My lawyer stated these demands are largely outrageous and intended to pressure me. He mentioned we will contest them all. However, it means more time, more money, and more stress. Anna has been active. She is attempting to portray me as the villain to anyone who will listen. Mutual friends. Some have reached out, bewildered. Apparently, Anna informed them I suffered a sudden mental breakdown on the honeymoon, became paranoid and controlling, and abandoned her by canceling her ticket. She claimed I fabricated the story about Noah to justify my abusive behavior. Some friends credit her, or at least are remaining neutral in a way that feels like they credit her. Others know me better and are supporting me, but it has still caused rifts. On social media, she has not named me directly, but she has made numerous vague posts about surviving betrayal, escaping a toxic marriage, being abandoned by someone you trusted, and lies being spread by a cruel person. Her friends, including Lisa, comment with supportive messages, calling her strong and courageous. It sickens me. Her family, her parents, are a mixed bag. Her dad appears to understand the truth, but is caught in the middle. He called me once, very stressed, and asked if there was any way to make this go away discreetly. I told him she needs to admit the truth and sign the divorce papers without these ridiculous demands. He said she refuses. Admit the truth and sign the divorce papers without these ridiculous demands. He said she refuses. Her mom, from what I gather, is entirely on Anna's side, believing I am the villain who deceived her innocent daughter. Her sister still speaks to me sometimes, chiefly to voice her annoyance with Anna's dramatic behavior and unwillingness to confront reality. She mentioned Anna has daily emotional outbursts, which typically include screaming, crying, and placing blame on everyone but herself. The direct harassment hasn't ceased, it merely shifted. Regarding blocked calls, I still receive calls from no caller ID that I don't answer. I presume it's her. I drop the divorce and try to fix what I broke. My lawyer has a copy. Work incident. 2 weeks ago, she appeared at my workplace. I work in quite a sizable office building. She bypassed the front desk by stating she was Mrs. and was delivering lunch for me. She came to my department and began shouting my name, insisting on speaking with me. My manager and security had to escort her out. She was screaming that I was attempting to ruin her and that I was a liar. It was mortifying. My HR department became involved. My lawyer dispatched a cease and desist letter to her lawyer concerning contact at my job. Physical incident. Last week, I was placing my garbage bins out on the curb in the evening. A vehicle decelerated. It was her. She lowered the window and began yelling insults at me. Then she tossed a milkshake from the window at me. It primarily struck my arm and the wall of my house. Then she quickly drove away. I noted the license plate. It was her vehicle. I contacted the police on that occasion. They filed a report. I cleaned the milkshake. It was just one more reminder of how erratic her behavior is. My lawyer is utilizing this for a potential restraining order request. I learned via Anna's sister that my anonymous letter to Noah's wife certainly reached her. Apparently, Noah's wife challenged him. He initially denied it, then gradually revealed some truths, then perhaps everything. The sister mentioned Noah and his wife are experiencing significant difficulties. She also said Anna telephoned Noah in tears after his wife discovered the truth, and Noah apparently instructed Anna to leave him be, and that she, Anna, had already created sufficient problems. Thus, Anna's elaborate scheme to elope with her married high school sweetheart is entirely ruined. Based on her sister's account, Anna is enraged about this. She holds me responsible for wrecking Noah's marriage and meddling in her personal affairs. Her absence of self-awareness is astonishing. She perceives no link between her conduct and these repercussions. It is invariably someone else's responsibility. Specifically, my responsibility. My lawyer is now pressing for a court date. He stated mediation is improbable to succeed with an individual this irrational and contentious. We're preparing our financial disclosures and our arguments against her demands. He is confident about the spousal support, the brief marriage, and her actions, but mentioned dividing assets can always be tricky, even with clear premarital contributions. He believes her increasingly erratic behavior, the work incident, and the milkshake attack will actually help my case by showing her instability and lack of credibility. We're documenting every single incident. I'm tired. This is exhausting. There are no good days, only days where it's slightly less awful. I simply want this to be over. I want her out of my life. I've accepted there's no easy way out. I changed my phone number. Just family and close friends have the new one. I'm considering moving once the divorce is final. I simply want peace. This is my life now, dealing with the fallout from marrying someone who was apparently a complete stranger with a secret life. I don't know when the next update will be. Likely when there's a major court development or knowing Anna, another crazy incident. Thanks for reading. It helps to write it all down, even if it's just to show I'm not the crazy one here. Time for another story you won't believe. I, 34F, was in a terrible accident about 3 months ago. A drunk driver ran a red light and crashed into my car. The impact caused my car to spin and strike a tankard truck that was illegally stopped at the intersection. My car caught fire. I remember the impact, the heat, and then not much else until I was in the hospital. I suffered severe burns. They are mostly on the left side of my body, including my face, arm, and leg. I've had multiple surgeries, skin grafts, and the doctors say I will be permanently disfigured. The pain has been unceasing, and the recovery process is slow and agonizing. I'm still in a specialized burn unit and will likely be here for at least another month, followed by extensive outpatient therapy and more reconstructive surgeries down the line. My husband, Mark, 36M, was initially there at the hospital. The first few days are a blur of pain and medication. I remember him being by my bedside, holding my hand. Or at least, I think I remember that. When I became more aware, perhaps a week or so after the accident, the bandages on my face had been changed. I hadn't seen myself yet, but I knew it was bad. The doctors were very gentle but direct about the extent of the scarring I would have. One afternoon, Mark was in the room. I was feeling especially low. The nurses had just completed a very painful debridement session. I was trying to talk to him to ask about things at home, our dog, anything to feel normal. He remained silent, mostly just glancing at his phone or gazing out the window. I inquired what was bothering him. He paused for a considerable time. Then he informed me he was struggling to deal with my appearance. He said, and I remember his exact words, that he found it difficult to look at me, that I was unbelievably ugly now. He mentioned he wasn't sure if he could manage being married to someone who appeared like me. He uttered this while I lay there, covered in bandages, hardly able to move and in unceasing pain. I was shocked. I couldn't comprehend it initially. It seemed like an additional blow on top of everything else I was astounded by. I couldn't comprehend it initially. It seemed like an additional blow on top of everything else I was suffering. I didn't yell. I didn't weep at that moment. I believe I was too astonished. I simply gazed at him, or where I assumed he was since my vision remained indistinct in one eye. I informed him quite calmly that if that was his sentiment, he ought to depart. I explained to him I needed to concentrate on healing, and I couldn't achieve that with someone who had such feelings about me in the room. He became defensive, stating I was being unjust, that he was merely being truthful, and that I was always telling him truthfulness was important. He claimed he was also a casualty in this, that his life was devastated as well. He ultimately departed, appearing angry. He didn't return the following day, or the day subsequent to that. It has been nearly 2 months since that discussion. He rang my hospital phone a couple of times in the initial week afterward. It's been almost 2 months since that discussion. He telephoned my hospital phone a few times in the first week following. I didn't answer. My sister, 30F, who who has been an unwavering support through this, informed him I wasn't ready to speak with him. He seemingly told her I was overreacting and being dramatic. He hasn't tried to visit. He sent one text message approximately a month ago, inquiring about some mail, and if I'd made preparations for our mortgage payment. My sister has been assisting me with my finances, so that was taken care of. Some of his family members have contacted my sister, stating I should be more understanding of Mark's shock and trauma. They mentioned he's very troubled. His mother even proposed that perhaps the pain medication was causing me to be irrational when I asked him to depart. She said I should contact him and apologize for pushing him away during his time of need. This is where I wonder if I'm the asshole. Was I too harsh? He did mention he was being truthful. Perhaps I should have attempted to discuss it further, even though what he uttered was so cruel. I was in a vulnerable state. He was meant to be my support. Instead, he centered my trauma on his unease with my new face. Support. Instead, he centered my trauma on his unease with my new face. My sister states I did nothing wrong, that his conduct was monstrous, but his family has me wondering if I overreacted by cutting him off so suddenly. I haven't started any communication. I've been concentrating on my physical therapy, my upcoming surgery, and simply getting through each day. The idea of speaking with him fills me with a chilling dread. So, am I the jerk for telling him to leave, and then declining contact after his remarks about my appearance post-accident? Update 1. Firstly, thank you to everyone who offered comments on my initial post. I attempted to read every single comment, even the severe ones, though most of you were remarkably supportive. It aided more than you realize to hear from individuals outside my direct situation. People inquired how I was capable of writing this, considering my injuries, which is a reasonable question. My burns are primarily on my left side. My right hand and arm were fortunately spared from the worst of it, so while it's slow and occasionally painful to sit up and type, I'm able to write with my right hand. My sister also assists me by transcribing things when I become too weary. Many of you also validated what my sister has been stating, that Mark's conduct was unacceptable, and I was not the jerk for my response. Much has occurred in the past month. I was ultimately released from the main hospital a few weeks ago. I'm now in a specialized rehabilitation center nearer to my sister's home. She's been wonderful, taking time off work to assist me in getting settled and transport me to various appointments. The rehabilitation is rigorous. Hours of physical and occupational therapy daily. Learning to utilize my left hand again is a challenge, and the nerve pain remains a considerable problem. My face. Well, it is what it is. I've seen it clearly now. The doctors are optimistic about future reconstructive surgeries, but the person I see in the mirror is a stranger. Mark's words about me being unbelievably ugly echo in my head sometimes, especially on bad days. As for Mark, he made no further direct contact with me after those first few calls I didn't answer at the hospital. However, about a week after my original post, his mother called my sister. She was very persistent, apparently. She told my sister that Mark was suffering and that I was being cruel by abandoning him after one small comment made under stress. My sister, who is usually very polite, apparently lost her temper a bit and told her exactly what she thought of Mark and his small comment. She told his mother that Mark abandoned me, not the other way around, and that if he was suffering, it was the consequence of his own actions. His mother hung up on her. A few days after that, I got a letter at the hospital, which was forwarded to the rehab facility. It was from Mark. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a strange, rambling letter. He wrote about how hard this has been for him, how his friends are asking about me and he doesn't know what to say, how the house feels empty. He mentioned the financial strain, the bills, and how he's worried about the mortgage. He did say he was sorry if what he said upset me, but that he was just trying to be honest and felt blindsided by my reaction. He then suggested that once I was feeling better and more like myself, we could discuss things. There was no mention of my injuries beyond how they were impacting him. No questions about my recuperation, No offer of support. It seemed entirely self-centered. I showed it to my sister and she agreed. I didn't reply. The legal aspect of things is also progressing. The drunk driver who hit me was found to be heavily intoxicated and had a history of DUIs. The trucking company whose vehicle was involved, though not responsible for the initial impact, possesses a substantial insurance policy. My attorney, whom my sister helped me locate, is very skilled. She specializes in catastrophic injury cases. She has been collecting all the information, medical records, police reports, and expert testimonies. She mentioned that due to the severity of my injuries, the permanent disfigurement, the loss of earning potential, my left hand and eyesight are affected, and the sheer carelessness of the drunk driver, any settlement or judgment would likely be significant. She also mentioned the trucking company might wish to settle to avoid a prolonged trial and adverse publicity, considering the circumstances of the fire. This legal matter is something Mark also referenced in his letter. Very briefly, he inquired if I had considered an attorney and said he hoped I would receive something fair because they would require it. That specific line in particular made my stomach churn. It seemed like he was already contemplating the money. I've started the process of separating my finances from his as much as possible. My sister is assisting me in opening new bank accounts. My lawyer has counseled me on how to handle joint assets, like the house. We still have a mortgage on it. Mark is still living there. I have no wish to go back to that house. Not now, perhaps not ever. The rehab is tough, but I'm making small progress. Some days are better than others. I'm trying to focus on my recovery and not let Mark's actions consume me. But it's hard when he, or his family, keep trying to insert themselves back into my life in these manipulative ways. I haven't spoken to him directly since that day in the hospital. I don't plan to. Thank you again for the support. It's helped me feel stronger in my decision. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been a while since my last update. So much has happened, and honestly, some days I'm just too exhausted to even think about writing it all down. But I wanted to keep those of you who were invested updated, and your previous advice was invaluable. My physical recovery is ongoing. I was discharged from the inpatient rehab facility about 6 weeks ago. I'm now living in a small apartment that my sister helped me find. It's accessible and close to my outpatient therapy center. The therapies are still grueling. Physical, occupational, and psychological. I've had one more reconstructive surgery on my hand, and there are many more planned for my face and arm over the next couple of years. The scars are prominent, and the disfigurement is, as the doctor said, permanent. I'm learning to live with this new version of myself. Some days are incredibly difficult. Simple tasks are still a challenge, and the reflection in the mirror can still be a shock. Now, for the primary reason I'm writing this update, the settlement and Mark. About a month ago, my lawyer informed me that the trucking company's insurers had proposed a settlement. After some negotiation, we reached an agreement. The settlement amount is $3 million. After legal fees and medical expenses already incurred or deducted, a very substantial sum will be left for my future care, lost income, and pain and suffering. The news was overwhelming. It's not a lottery win. It's compensation for a life-altering injury caused by someone else's recklessness. It means I won't have to worry about medical bills, and I can afford the best possible ongoing care and reconstructive surgeries. It gives me a sense of security in an otherwise very insecure new life. The settlement was finalized and became official about 2 weeks ago. My lawyer told me to stay silent for as long as possible, but such news, especially in smaller communities or through legal circles, tends to spread. Of course, I hadn't told Mark. We had no direct contact. My lawyer did send him a formal letter concerning the pending divorce proceedings. Yes, I had filed for divorce, and the division of our marital assets, mainly the house. Then, about a week after the settlement was finalized, Mark's behavior shifted dramatically. He began calling me several times a day. I didn't answer. He left voicemails. The tone was entirely different from his earlier messages. It was no longer about his suffering or how I was being unfair. Now it was all concern and fondness. Honey, I'm so worried about you. I miss you terribly. We need to talk. I've made a terrible mistake. Next, he began texting about how he's been a fool, how he was scared and confused after the accident, how he didn't mean what he said. He said he loved me, that he always has. He said he realized he couldn't live without me. He mentioned seeing an article about the trucking company settling a large case. He didn't explicitly say he knew it was mine, but the implication was clear, and that he was so glad I would be looked after. When I didn't answer his calls or texts, he appeared at my apartment. I'm unsure how he found my address. I suspect his mother might have coaxed it out of someone, or he did some investigating. My sister was with me when he arrived. He buzzed, and when I didn't reply, he started banging on the door, shouting my name, saying he simply wanted to talk, to apologize. My sister contacted the police. They arrived and escorted him off the property, cautioning him against harassment. He was seemingly very emotional and told the police he was simply trying to see his sick wife. His family has also increased their efforts. His mother has called my sister, weeping, saying Mark is a changed man, that he's heartbroken and profoundly regrets his actions. She pleaded with my sister to persuade me to give him another chance. She even noted how wonderful it was that I got the settlement, because now Mark wouldn't have to fret so much about providing for me while I recovered, and they could rebuild their lives together. The nerve is astonishing. I haven't uttered a single word to him. My determination is firmer than ever. His sudden miraculous change of heart, timed perfectly with the news of my settlement, reveals everything I need to know. It's not about me, my welfare, or remorse for his cruelty. It's about the money. He called me incredibly ugly and deserted me when I was at my lowest, most vulnerable point. He displayed no remorse, no concern, only self-pity and irritation until he sensed money. The divorce is moving forward. My lawyer knows about his recent behavior and the settlement. She is making sure my interests are safeguarded. It's revolting and heartbreaking to witness him act this way. It confirms that the man I married either never truly existed or died the day he saw my burned face and felt revulsion instead of empathy. I'm not certain what he'll attempt next, but I'm ready. My sister and my lawyer are my protection. I'm concentrating on my recovery, on creating a new life for myself, a life that absolutely does not involve him. It's simply nauseating to grasp that his sudden wish to have me back appears to carry a $3 million price tag. Update 3. It's me, again. 2 months have gone by since my last update, and matters with Mark have sadly intensified. His efforts to re-enter my life, or more precisely into my settlement money, have grown more desperate, and frankly, more erratic. After he was led from my apartment by the police, he ceased appearing physically for a short time. I believe the police warning frightened him for a while. Nonetheless, the calls and texts persisted. If anything, they grew more frequent. He would leave lengthy, tearful voicemails declaring his undying love, his profound remorse, how he couldn't sleep or eat due to the guilt. He'd recount past memories, attempting to remind me of the good times. It was an unending onslaught. I altered my phone number, which offered some peace, but he then turned to other methods. He began sending me emails. My former email address, which I seldom check, but he then turned to other approaches. He began sending me emails. My former email address, which I seldom check now, was abruptly inundated. The emails resembled the voicemails. Pleas for forgiveness, declarations of love, and subtle, and at times not so subtle, references to our future and how we could use the settlement money to get the finest care for me and begin anew. He even sent links to houses in neighborhoods he knew I used to like, speaking about purchasing a new home together. His mother has been unyielding. She calls my sister nearly every day. Sometimes she's weeping and pleading. Other times she's furious and accusatory, claiming I'm cruel and vindictive, that I'm ruining her son. She even had the audacity to tell my sister that I owed Mark an opportunity because of the marriage vows, and that the settlement money was marital property, and he was entitled to a portion for his emotional distress and suffering. My lawyer has already clarified the legal position of the settlement, especially considering it's for personal injury after separation. His desertion was clear, but his mother appears to believe what she wants to believe. The most unsettling incident occurred about 3 weeks ago. Mark somehow discovered where I attend my outpatient physical therapy sessions. He waited for me in the parking area. When I emerged, leaning on my cane and feeling drained after a difficult session, he came up to me. He appeared disheveled, as if he hadn't been sleeping. He immediately began begging me, saying he simply wanted to talk, to look me in the eye and tell me how truly sorry he was. He attempted to grasp my arm. I recoiled and drew back. I told him, my voice a little shaky but firm, to leave me alone, that I had nothing to say to him, and that he was harassing me. He began to grow agitated, his voice rising. He said I was being cold and uncaring, that he loved me. He even knelt in the parking lot, pleading with me to take him back. It was a scene. Fortunately, one of the therapists noticed what was happening from the window and came out with a security guard. They made Mark leave and ensured I reached my sister's car safely. Following that incident, my lawyer sent him a formal cease and desist letter, cautioning him that any further contact or attempts to approach me would result in a restraining order application. That seems to have curbed his direct approaches for now, but I feel like I'm constantly glancing over my shoulder. The divorce is progressing slowly, primarily due to his lack of cooperation regarding the division of assets, specifically the house. He's disputing things, trying to prolong it. My lawyer says it's a common tactic when one party is bitter or trying to exert control. My lawyer says it's a common tactic when one party is bitter or trying to exert control. Amidst all of this, I'm trying to focus on my recovery. The reconstructive surgeries are being planned. I've begun seeing a trauma therapist who is helping me process the accident, the disfigurement, and Mark's betrayal. It's a long road. His actions are an ongoing cause of stress and anger, a distraction from the healing I so sorely need. He's not displaying regret for hurting me. He's showing desperation because he realizes he discarded a comfortable future when he discarded me. The man is not truly sorry. He's sorry he was exposed as a terrible person and is now losing out on money. I'm recording everything, every call, every email, every incident. My sister has been a saint, handling calls from his mother and generally serving as my buffer. I don't know what I'd do without her. I simply want him gone from my life, permanently. The fact that he's contesting so strongly now, after being so swift to abandon me when I was broken and had nothing, is the most obvious proof of his true character. He doesn't want me. He wants what I have. Update 4. Hello again, everyone. It's been an extended 6 months since my last update, and I suppose this will probably be my final one regarding this specific chapter of my life. The situation with Mark came to a rather definitive, though wholly unpleasant end. The cease and desist letter from my lawyer did discourage Mark's direct physical approaches for some time, but his indirect harassment campaign persisted. He employed third parties, sent gifts to my apartment, which I swiftly returned or donated, and maintained his social media complaints. His mother also maintained her campaign of calls to my sister, switching between tearful pleas and bitter accusations. It was draining for everyone involved. The divorce proceedings were lingering, mainly because Mark was being uncooperative. He disputed the valuation of the marital home, quibbled over every piece of furniture, and sought to claim a share of my settlement, mentioning his emotional investment in our marriage and the trauma he also suffered. My lawyer was superb, dismissing his absurd claims one by one, but it all consumed time and added to my stress. Roughly 3 months ago, matters became more serious. Mark, in what I can only describe as an utter failure of discretion, tried to leverage the legal system to compel my action. He filed a petition for spousal support, asserting he was incapable of employment due to the profound emotional distress caused by our separation and my unwillingness to reunite. He also asserted that my injuries and ensuing settlement had created a significant disparity in our financial situations and that he was warranted support to preserve the lifestyle he had become used to during our marriage. This was in addition to his insistence on a greater portion of the house equity. His petition was, to say the least, laughed out of court. The judge was unimpressed by his assertions, particularly when shown the chronology of his abandonment, his harsh remarks to me in the hospital, and his abrupt resurgence of interest occurring concurrently with my settlement. The proof of his harassment, including the police report from when he appeared at my apartment and the event at my therapy center, was also shown. The judge rejected his petition for spousal support completely and reprimanded him for squandering the court's time. This public embarrassment appeared to be a turning point for Mark, but not positively. He grew more unpredictable. He began leaving furious, sometimes jumbled voicemails on my sister's phone, since I had blocked him everywhere. He blamed me for destroying his life, for alienating everyone from him. There were no longer any declarations of love or regret. It was entirely fury and condemnation. The ultimate confrontation occurred roughly a month ago. The divorce was approaching its concluding phases. We had a court date set to complete the division of assets, which was probably not going to favor him, considering his conduct and the clear pre-separation status of my personal injury settlement funds. The day prior to the court date, he appeared at my apartment building once more. This occasion he did not buzz or rap. He waited in the lobby, and when another tenant opened the main entrance, he snuck in and went directly to my apartment door, pounding on it loudly. I was by myself. My heart was thumping. I instantly telephoned the police and my lawyer. He was yelling through the door, not pleased this occasion, but issuing demands. He shouted that I was indebted to him, that I was self-centered and unkind, that I had seized everything from him. He began kicking the door, not pleased this time, but demands. He shouted that I owed him, that I was selfish and cruel, that I had taken everything from him. He began kicking the door. I was terrified. The police arrived within minutes. They had to physically restrain him. He was shouting obscenities, calling me names, including his favorite, ugly, and saying I would regret this. He was arrested for harassment, breaching the spirit of the cease and desist, though no formal restraining order was in place yet. His actions were clearly escalating and causing a disturbance. The following day in court, he was a wreck. His attorney looked embarrassed. The judge, already familiar with his past antics, was visibly displeased. The arrest from the prior night was brought up. Mark tried to speak, to make a statement, but he just began rambling about how unfair everything was, how I had bewitched everyone. He showed absolutely no regret, no understanding of the pain and fear he had caused me. The divorce was finalized. The judge awarded me the whole of my settlement, ruling it a separate property due to the nature of the funds, compensation for personal injury, and the timing relative to his clear abandonment. The marital home was ordered to be sold, with the equity to be divided according to usual marital property rules, which, after the mortgage and fees, wasn't a windfall for him, especially with his own legal fees. Mark faced charges for the harassment and disturbance. He was fined, given probation, and ordered to attend a court-mandated anger management course. A formal restraining order was also issued, preventing him from contacting me or coming near my residence or places I frequent. His mother called my sister one final time after everything was settled. She did not cry or beg. She simply said, in a cold voice, that I had ruined her son and that she hoped I was happy. My sister told her that Mark had ruined himself with his own choices and then hung up. We have not heard from them since, so that is where things stand. Thank you all for listening and for your support throughout this incredibly difficult journey. It helped to know I was not alone in seeing his behavior for what it truly was. I am closing this chapter now and looking toward a future where Mark is nothing but a bad memory. The final story for today. My wife, who I will call Chloe, and I have been married for 5 years. We have been together for 8. We built a life together from scratch. We had a small apartment when we first got married, and we both worked long hours to save up for a house. We bought our house 3 years ago. It was our dream. We did everything together, from picking out the paint colors to planting a garden in the backyard. We were supposed to start trying for a family next year. That was the plan we agreed on. My best friend has been my friend since our first year of college. We were roommates for 4 years. He was the best man at my wedding. I was going to be the best man at his, if he ever got married. He was more like a brother than a friend. He came to our house at least twice a week. We would watch sports, work on cars, and just spend time together. He and Chloe always got along wonderfully. I thought it was ideal that my wife and my best friend liked each other so much. I saw them as 2 of the most important people in my world, and it made me happy that they had their own friendship. Roughly 2 months ago, Chloe told me she was pregnant. I was shocked. We had been using protection because we had agreed to wait until next year. I remember asking her about it, and she simply smiled and said it must have been a happy accident. She mentioned that maybe the universe knew better than we did. I was hesitant initially because of our plan, but her happiness was infectious. I got swept up in it. I started getting excited. I started looking at cribs online and reading books about being a father. I allowed myself to believe in the happy accident. The initial sign that something was amiss came about a month ago. Mark's long-term girlfriend, a woman I will call Sarah, phoned me late one night. She was crying so intensely I could barely understand her. She informed me that she and Mark had broken up. When I inquired why, she mentioned that Mark had been acting distant for months, and she eventually confronted him. He had admitted to cheating on her. I was devastated for her, and for him. I assured her I was so sorry, and that I would speak with Mark. I thought he was simply being foolish, and that I could help him mend things with Sarah. They had been together for almost 10 years. When I confronted Mark about it, he was defensive. He informed me it was none of my concern, and that his relationship with Sarah was complicated. He mentioned he had made a mistake, and he was handling it. I pressed him, telling him that 10 years was not something to simply discard. He grew angry and told me to let it go. He yelled that I had no idea what was going on. The fight was ugly. We had never fought like that before. He departed my house, and we did not communicate for a week. During that week, Chloe was highly supportive of me. She comforted me when I was upset about my argument with Mark. She assured me that he was probably just going through something and that he would eventually come around. She encouraged me to give him his space. I now see that she was not being supportive. She was being manipulative. The truth came out last week. Sarah called me again. She sounded different this time. Not hysterical, but cold and very calm. She mentioned she had done some digging because Mark's story did not add up. She had found a charge on his credit card statement for a hotel room from a few months back. On a hunch, she checked his phone records. There were dozens of calls and texts to one number he had tried to delete. She looked up the number. It was Chloe's. Sarah told me that she believed Mark and Chloe were having an affair. The hotel charge was from a weekend when I was away for a work conference. The phone calls and texts had been going on for at least 6 months. She then asked me when Chloe's due date was. I told her. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Sarah told me that, based on when she thought the affair began, there was a strong chance the baby was not mine. I ended the call. I did not want to believe it. I entered the living room where Chloe was watching television. I stood in front of the screen and I asked her directly if she was having an affair with Mark. She immediately started crying. She did not even attempt to deny it. She just sat there on the couch, sobbing, and said it was a mistake. The argument that followed was the worst moment of my entire life. I did not remain calm. I yelled at her. I asked her how she could do this to me, in our house. She cried and said she didn't know how it happened. She mentioned she had been feeling lonely and that I was always working. She claimed that Mark was simply there, and one thing led to another. I got in her face and yelled that I worked hard to build our life, the life she wanted. I pointed at the walls of our house and told her my sweat paid for them. Then I asked her about the baby. I asked her whose baby it was. She broke down completely. She sobbed that she didn't know. She said she was scared and that she was hoping it was mine. She kept repeating that she wanted it to be mine. That was what broke me. The hope that she could lie to me for the rest of my life, that she could raise another man's child with me and have me believe it be mine. That was what broke me. The hope that she could lie to me for the rest of my life, that she could raise another man's child with me and have me believe it was mine. I told her to leave. She refused. She screamed that she was pregnant and had nowhere to go. She said I was being cruel. I started grabbing her belongings and throwing them into bags. She tried to stop me, grabbing my arms. I pulled away from her and I told her that if she wasn't out of the house in an hour, I would throw all of her belongings onto the front lawn. She finally departed, still crying, and went to her parents' house. The next day, she started calling my phone. Her parents also started calling me. They were calling me a monster for throwing out my pregnant wife. They mentioned that all marriages encountered difficulties and that I had to be a man and pardon her. Chloe had informed them we'd had an argument, but she omitted the details about the affair and the baby's paternity. That's when I made my choice. I drove over to her parents' house. Chloe was there, seated on the sofa between her mother and father. They all gazed at me as if I were a villain. Her father began to stand up, telling me I had a lot of nerve showing my face. I didn't let him finish. I stood in their living room and I recounted everything. I told them that Chloe had been intimate with my best friend for over 6 months. I also told them she was pregnant and had admitted to me that the baby might be Mark's. The room became completely silent. Chloe's face turned white. Her mother just stared at me, then at Chloe. Her father sat back down, appearing stunned. Chloe began screaming that I was a liar and that I was trying to ruin her life. She stood up and attempted to come at me, but her father held her back. I looked at her and told her that she had ruined her own life and mine. Then I turned around and walked out. Now my phone is blowing up with messages from her family, and from our mutual friends. Some are calling me an evil, vindictive person for airing her dirty laundry in that manner. They claim I should have handled it privately. Chloe is claiming I did it simply to hurt and humiliate her. My own parents think I was vindicated, but they are partial, and I am beginning to question if I went too far. I was hurt and angry, and I responded. But was it the correct choice? Went too far. I was hurt and angry, and I responded. But was it the correct choice? Ida? Update 1. It has been 2 weeks since my initial post. First, thank you to everyone who commented. The overwhelming NTA verdict helped me feel less like I was losing my mind. Reading stories from other people who had been through similar betrayals was dreadful, but it also made me feel less alone. I want to provide an update because things have developed, and not favorably. After I left her parents' house, the situation divided Chloe's family. Her father called me the next day. He sounded like a shattered man. He expressed regret for his daughter's conduct and for how he had treated me. He told me he was disgusted and ashamed. Her mother, on the other hand, has firmly stood by Chloe. She has been leaving me voice messages telling me that I am ruining her daughter and that I will lament my actions. Chloe is currently staying with her. As for Mark, he has been utterly silent. He has not answered my calls or texts. He has practically disappeared. His ex-girlfriend, Sarah, however, has been in touch. After my initial post, I decided to meet with her in person. We met, and it was one of the most peculiar experiences of my life. Sarah had gone through Mark's bank statements and phone records with a fine-tooth comb. She possessed his login information. She had dates, times, and locations. The affair was more widespread than I had envisioned. It wasn't merely a single error or several of them. It was an ongoing relationship. They followed a routine. They met for lunches. They utilized a particular hotel across town. Listening to the details made me feel ill. Sarah is angry. She isn't merely heartbroken, she is enraged. She squandered a decade of her life on a man who was constructing a distinct existence behind her back. As we spoke, she gazed at me and stated that she wanted to ensure they wouldn't escape accountability. She mentioned they shouldn't be permitted to simply devastate our lives and construct a joyful one together amidst the wreckage. I realized I concurred with her entirely. It was at that point that we chose to collaborate. It isn't about vengeance in the dramatic, cinematic sense. It is about guaranteeing there are repercussions for their deeds. The initial step involved retaining an attorney. I located the most merciless divorce lawyer I could discover. I had a meeting with him last week, with Sarah accompanying us. She furnished all the proof she had gathered. My attorney was extremely straightforward. The state where we reside is a no-fault divorce state, so the infidelity doesn't legally impact the distribution of assets significantly. Nonetheless, the child's paternity presents a substantial problem. He has submitted the divorce documents on my behalf. He also submitted a motion to mandate a prenatal paternity test. Chloe received the divorce documents at her mother's residence. The process server reported that her mother opened the door, accepted the papers, and then slammed the door in his face. Some hours later, my phone rang. It was Chloe. She was shouting so loudly that I needed to hold the phone away from my ear. She was hysterical. She accused me of attempting to take her baby from her. She shrieked that the stress would cause her to miscarry and that it would be my fault. She stated I was a monster and that she wished she had never encountered me. I simply listened, and when she paused to catch her breath, I informed her that she should have her lawyer reach out to mine. Then I ended the call. The following day, Mark and Chloe appeared at my house together. I observed them pull up from the living room window. I opened the door before they even had a chance to knock. They stood on my porch, Mark appearing nervous and Chloe looking defiant. Mark began to speak, stating that we needed to talk, that this had all progressed too far. I interrupted him. I informed him that he was unwelcome at my house and that he needed to depart. Chloe pushed past him and confronted me closely. She yelled that this was her house too and that I could not simply eject her and then try to take her child. She jabbed me in the chest, shouting that I was being manipulated by Sarah. She called Sarah a vindictive witch who was corrupting my mind. Mark attempted to pull Chloe back, instructing her to calm down. She turned on him, shouting at him not to dictate what she should do, and that he needed to be a man and confront me. The pair began arguing right there on my front porch. It was a pitiful sight. He was telling her she was making matters worse, and she was crying that he was not backing her. He was telling her she was making matters worse, and she was crying that he was not backing her. I'd had enough. I shouted over both of them. I informed them they had 5 seconds to leave my property before I called the police for trespassing. That finally silenced them. Chloe gave me a stare of pure hatred. Mark simply looked defeated. He took her by the arm and guided her back to the car. As they drove off, I saw them arguing in the car. I've changed all the locks on the house. I've also frozen our joint savings account, leaving only the joint checking account open with sufficient funds for immediate bills. My attorney advised me to do this to safeguard the marital assets from being drained. I've begun the process of getting the house appraised so I can buy her out of her share. Sarah and I have been spending much time together, mostly with our respective attorneys, and reviewing financial documents. She is suing Mark for the funds she invested in the house they shared, which was in his name. I know this will get much uglier before it gets better. Update 2. This will likely be my lengthiest update yet, as events have sped up dramatically in the past month. The request for a prenatal paternity test was granted by the court. Chloe opposed it, of course. Her attorney contended it was medically unneeded and was being done solely to harass a pregnant woman. My attorney, in turn, showed the evidence Sarah had gathered, including the hotel receipts and text logs, asserting that determining paternity was vital for the divorce proceedings, especially regarding future child support and custody arrangements. The judge sided with us. The day Chloe had to undergo the amniocentesis was a tense one. Her mother phoned me in the morning and left a voicemail. She was weeping, blaming me for putting her daughter and grandchild at risk for my own self-centered need for revenge. She called me a heartless creature. I deleted the voicemail without hearing all of it. I didn't feel good about the procedure, but I felt it was needed. The uncertainty was a poison, and I needed it out of my system. The results returned 2 weeks later. My attorney phoned me and asked me to come to his office. Sarah came with me. We sat in his conference room, and he slid a document across the table. I didn't even need to read the whole thing. The key phrase leapt out at me. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the fetus. I should have felt relief. I just stared at the paper. It was the undeniable confirmation of the lie I had almost lived. Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand on my arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then my attorney cleared his throat and began discussing the next steps. With the paternity confirmed, we could now finalize the divorce on far cleaner terms. There would be no child support for me, no custody battle. I was free. We had the house appraised. As I anticipated, Chloe's attorney disputed the appraisal, asserting it was too low. We are currently in the process of obtaining a second court-appointed appraisal. In the interim, I have been systematically separating our lives. I went through every room in the house and packed all of Chloe's personal possessions into boxes. I stacked them neatly in the garage. I called her and left a message informing her that she could arrange a time to collect them. She came with Mark a few days later. It was not a civil occurrence. I had asked 2 of my friends to be at the house with me, just in case matters escalated. Chloe walked into the house and looked around. She noticed that I had already removed all of our photos. The walls were bare. She began to cry, not loudly but softly. She whispered that she could not believe I had erased her. Mark attempted to play the peacemaker again. He approached me and said that they were struggling. He stated that with his legal battle with Sarah, and now with the baby arriving, they were in a difficult financial situation. He inquired if I could find it in my heart to be more generous with the divorce settlement. He had the nerve to stand in the house I purchased, beside the woman he had an affair with, and ask me for money. Something within me snapped. I told him that every dollar I gave Chloe, past what the law mandated, was a dollar I was removing from my own future, a future they had attempted to destroy. I stated that they had made their choices, and now they had to abide by them. Chloe overheard me. Her subdued tears morphed into rage. She began screaming that I was fixated on money, and that I never truly cared about her. She pointed at me and shouted that I was a cold, empty man, and that this was why she had sought out Mark initially. She claimed Mark had a heart, that he had passion, while I only possessed a checkbook. The dispute escalated into a full-blown shouting match in my living room. My friends had to intervene between us. Mark was shouting at me to stop bothering Chloe, stating she was pregnant. I yelled back that he should have considered that before he slept with my wife. Chloe was weeping hysterically, calling me every name she could imagine. Amidst it all, she stumbled and grasped her stomach, crying out that she was experiencing cramps. Mark panicked. He began shouting at me that I had caused this, that if anything befell the baby, it was my fault. He assisted a weeping Chloe out of the house and to their car, giving me a gaze of pure venom before he departed. They did not take any of her belongings. The boxes are still located in my garage. The fallout has spread to our social group. Sarah and I made a deliberate choice not to hide what happened. When our mutual friends inquired, we told them the truth, supported by the paternity test results. The friend group has been broken apart. Some have sided with Chloe and Mark, believing the story that I am a vengeful monster and that Sarah is a scorned woman out for blood. Others are disgusted with them and have completely cut them off. Every social gathering has turned into a minefield. We have lost friends over this, but the biggest escalation took place at work. Mark and I worked for the same company, though in different departments. Sarah, while reviewing Mark's expenses for her own lawsuit, noticed that he had expensed several costly client dinners on dates that matched the hotel stays. The restaurants were nowhere close to the client's offices. She also found records of him using the company car for trips that were clearly not work-related, judging by the mileage and locations. Sarah and I discussed what to do with this information for a long time, but then we considered Mark asking me for money, about Chloe blaming me for everything. We decided to take action. I anonymously submitted the evidence to the company's HR department through their whistleblower channel. I did not bring up the affair. I simply presented it as a case of potential expense and asset fraud. An internal investigation was started last week. I know this because Mark was suspended awaiting the outcome. Yesterday, I learned at work that he was fired. They ended his employment for gross misconduct and misuse of company property. As soon as I heard the news, I felt a rush of something I can only describe as dark satisfaction. He had lost his job. His career at the company we had both begun at as junior engineers was over. I called Sarah and told her. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Good." The consequences were immediate. That night, my car's tires were slashed while it was parked in my driveway. There is no proof, but I know who did it. I have filed a police report and installed security cameras around the house. This is my life now. Sarah and I have become closer through all of this. Our relationship started as an alliance, but it is becoming something more. We understand each other's anger and pain. We are the only two people who know the full story. We are in this together until the end. I am the only two people who know the full story. We are in this together until the end. I am no longer wondering if I am the asshole. I honestly do not care anymore. I am just seeing this through. Final update, this is the last time I'll be posting about this situation. There is not a lot left to say, and frankly, I am weary of living in it. The last few months have been a slow, drawn-out conclusion to a miserable chapter of my life. The divorce was finalized last month. After Mark was fired, their ability to fight me on financial matters vanished. Chloe's lawyer grew much more agreeable. They accepted the second valuation of the house. I had to get a new mortgage, but I managed to buy her out. The house is now officially solely mine. Her name is off the deed. Her boxes from the garage were collected by her father while I was at work. He left a brief note for me, simply saying he was sorry for everything. I haven't heard from her mother since that last voicemail. Mark's career's in ruins. Being fired for gross misconduct from a company in our industry has effectively blacklisted him. Sarah's lawsuit against him also finished. She was able to show that she had contributed a considerable amount of money to their shared home and assets. The court ordered him to repay her. Between that and his unemployment, he is financially ruined. Chloe gave birth to a boy 2 weeks ago. I only know this because a past mutual friend sent me a text message with a picture. I deleted it right away. The baby's existence is a fact, but it has nothing to do with me. According to the same friend, Chloe and Mark are residing in a small, inexpensive apartment. Mark is working a manual labor job for cash to make ends meet. Chloe is on maternity leave from her part-time job, but there's no guarantee it will be there when she's ready to return. Their lives are a mess. They got what they desired, each other and a baby, but they lost everything else. Sarah and I are together now. We live together in my house. I fell in love with Sarah.